Well, to the 0.1 people that may watch this, this is crap. What is this? Part 1, I think? To why? I mean, that's not what it's titled. Did I become an atheist in 6 months? Okay, I had to find the page for like 5 minutes. So, this should be the part 1, I'm hoping. I'm hoping that I went over all the little things that I wanted to go over. At the top, oh wait a minute, I forgot to say the date. 736. I'm not really going to be hearable. There's going to be background noise, but this is the one spot that I really have to record. And luckily it's been getting cooler at night the past 3 days, kind of. Because it's just like it's too hot in the daytime to make anything. My phone will overheat because it's 110 degrees and stuff, or something like that, or at least that's the index. It really doesn't feel like that, but I think that because I've been in so many hotter and cooler places, I'm just maybe can't tell, but this is still the hottest place I've been though, especially year round. Because like when I was in Cali, well honestly nah, Cali's pretty cold, but it was hot like during the summer, but that's kind of besides the point. Okay, I really hope this is recording, because I just got a notification that it's not really recording. So, let me just go ahead and start reading this. At the top, I have the things that I'm supposed to put in the description. My 2 religion videos, which if I'm remembering right, that's my video, my one video that's well over an hour long, where I just talk about a lot of different things that I've thought about when it comes to getting scammed by religious and spiritual people, and I don't know what the other thing was. There was some other stuff I talked about there, but I don't remember. And then the second one, don't really remember what that was about either, but it'll be in the description. But even if it's not, I know for a fact that and my other videos about the issue of religion are in my There's Help Out There model, quote unquote, playlist. And probably my cult playlist too, but I don't really know. I do know that my Kundalini cult video and my voodoo cult lady situation re-upload of the part 1 of that situation are in my cult playlist, and they're the first videos in there. So then this other thing, Truth of Sex Addiction video, which is where I go over like how pretty much I was about to say the deliverance community, but really I can't even say that because they're the ones that believe in the supernatural and will actually say that this is spiritual. But sometimes they're still like this, but especially in like the spiritual or especially religious people, and more so Protestant, I guess, that believe in demonization and even full-blown possession. No. No. The ones that don't really believe in the supernatural, I mean, I'm so dissociated and I'm trying to remember what I'm even trying to say. Those are the ones that'll especially be like, well, if you have sexual addiction, you just, you want to be a sinner, you like sexual addiction. What else is it that people say with that? You just need to pray, you just need to learn to warfare, pray. The ones that believe in the deliverance, that actually acknowledge demonization, will be like, you just need deliverance. But nobody wants to admit why people are actually having these issues, and also nobody wants to talk about when none of those things that people suggest work. And that's why people just fall into the whole, well, you just like it and you just want to do a thing, because nobody can really give any real answers or help, because really in any situation there is no quote unquote help. You save yourself. And there's a lot that I could say about that. I even started to realize, and I was even thinking back during all the deliverance scams, even since well before I ran away, that maybe what this really was a sign of is the fact that I have to figure things out for myself and help myself. But anyhow, in that video, I talk about how the only thing that actually helped with me getting over majority of those issues, or at least the main issues, was running away and being homeless. especially when it came to corn addiction, since kind of 4, but more so really 7, which the typical age to become addicted to all that stuff is somewhere from age 4 to 8, even though most people don't want to acknowledge that. So anywho, being homeless and just like not having internet, not having a working phone, having a phone that's dead for weeks, that's the only thing that actually helped me get over that. And I know people are gonna, I mean, if anybody even watched this, they would say that that's, I don't know, blasphemy or something. But honestly, I don't really think I would have ever gotten over like most of those issues if it wasn't for running away and being homeless. And aside from the whole not having a working phone, just being out of the abuse situation that was actually making me fall into those coping mechanisms and I guess I could say the spiritual temptations was like one of the big things with that too. If I was still in the abuse situation, yeah, I would still have all types of issues. So running away and then just everything that comes with being homeless is what helped with that. And that's the main thing I really try to talk about in that video, but I do go on a like hour plus long rant. And that really goes into this because like for one, people abuse is so normalized and people just say that that's what's supposed to happen in family system. That's just what happens to young people, that if you even talk about how you have this issue and that issue because of abuse, people are just going to tell you, be nice to your parents, honor your parents, shut up about it, all those different things, because nobody cares anyways. And like, I mean, I've even mentioned before, a long time ago, I think, that a lot of the people that I kind of used to look up to up until really like 6 months ago as the whole premise of this series, they already know that like they wouldn't approve of anything that I have or am doing. They wouldn't approve of me being a runaway. They wouldn't approve of me not talking to my abusive relatives that never liked me anyways. It's like I can just tell those people are, and it's like I was looking up to people that wouldn't like me anyways, and I even knew that then, but now I really think about that even more. Or at least most of them, but even the ones that did understand my situation and actually did talk to, they were still really scammy and didn't give a crap or help me. So, okay, therapy lets you get, oh yeah, and then I know I made a video that may be unlisted, I think, and I think it was titled, Is Deliverance the New Therapy or something like that. And it also reminds me of a video that I made, which is actually a re-upload because I think I made it at like 14 or something. But the video was titled Therapy Skepticism or something like that. I was still stuck in the 18 obsession, so I still didn't really get the fact that actually, if you're still, well, I did know if you're still living with their abusers, they're always going to like side with their abusers. But even if you're 18 plus, the reality is that they're still most likely going to gaslight you about your abuse and what actually made you quote unquote mentally ill anyways. But anywho, I put therapy lets you get abused. Then once you're older and out, now we may acknowledge your abuse and quote unquote help you. And it also goes into the whole thing of like, people pretty much like, we're going to help you get abused, side with your abusers, make money off of your abuse, abuse you ourselves, use you as an experiment, and give you DID and all that stuff. But then once you get away from your main abusers that put you in the system that was helping to abuse you, now if you're old enough, which is honestly really typically 30, 40 plus, and you're away from your abusers, and if you're in a decent enough situation to where we're not going to label you off as a traumatized, poor, crazy person or something like that, now we're going to acknowledge, yeah, you were abused, and now we're going to help you heal from all your trauma that we could have stopped in the making anyways. And I don't really remember what all I wanted to say with that. I wanted to go into something deeper with that really helps connect it to this. But one thing that this does make me think about, though, that I remembered earlier that I have talked about in a couple videos the past few years, is a whole situation back when I still used to watch those multi-hour long live streams about just spiritual stuff pretty much. And during this one live stream, this one guy got on and he was talking about how he was kicked out homeless at 13 or something, and when he was 14, some dude ended up taking him in. Of course, the chomo, because as I always say, only predatory people help people. The real quote unquote nice, good, healthy people that are quote unquote mentally together and financially together enough to help people don't help people. They don't want to be involved in the drama, the trauma, other people's situations, and generally nobody really cares. And like in my video titled Nobody Cares or Nobody Gives a Crap About Anybody, that I'll put in the description, whatever it's titled, where the T. Xandos interview is the thumbnail. I have that screenshot of that one dude's comment where he was like, everybody's being used unless you're useless. And that's also true, which, as I've said before, it also makes me think back to that one screenshot that I used in one of my videos in the hypothetically pedo / paraphilia playlist, where some sex prayer was like, everybody's an asset in someone else's fantasy. And so yeah, so let me keep going. So the guy was like, the dude essayed him for years and years, pretty much always. And he did leave at some point or something like that. And he was like, but I've forgiven the dude because Jesus, because God, I've forgiven the dude. And now nobody else will take care of him or be around him. But I've moved back in with him, and I'm taking care of him because he's getting old, and it was something else. He's old and crippled, and now I'm helping. Pretty much he's showering the dude and wiping his butt and probably still getting essayed by him. And he just went on this whole rant. And even the deliverance minister dude, because he was essayed himself, so he really doesn't like chomos. Even he was like shaking his head and had a look on his face like, wouldn't be me, during the whole live stream and the whole time the dude was talking about the thing. And it's like, there's so much that I could say about that's wrong, and that's people pleasing and codependency and CPTSD, not quote unquote forgiveness. But one of the first things that came to my mind is, where was the church when you were homeless at 14? That's one of the main things I was thinking about, aside from the other issues and that whole little thing that he talked about. And there's a reason that nobody's helping that dude. In fact, I know back when I still used to really watch videos like that, I had once watched this one video, don't remember who made it, and I ended up seeing a couple other videos like that, and it was pretty much people saying, don't always try to jump in to help somebody because, or at least have discernment with it and pray about it first, because they may be experiencing judgment from God. Their current situation may be judgment, although I know that could be used in so many manipulative ways and somebody can use that against me, which of course, due to religion and ageism, a lot of people will try to do that, and they'll just try to be like, oh, well, you're probably out here because you were being bad, and then since I'm a female, people automatically assume, oh, you got kicked out for being fast and grown and getting pregnant. And it's like, shoot, do I even look like I can carry a baby? And a lot of people do assume that because I'm a girl. And it's so sick anyways, because typically these girls and even these boys, although it would be the female getting pregnant, obviously, but typically they're getting pregnant by some abusive family member anyways. And for the girls, typically their mom's boyfriend or uncle. And then they're getting kicked out for that because the mom feels like they're competing with them over their boyfriend, but nobody ever wants to talk about that part. But luckily that wasn't my situation anyways, but that's what people assume. But they don't even see it as abuse, they just see it as you being quote unquote bad. Anywho, so then I need to put my Red Rum is Evil / Sixth Commandment culture video or playlist in the description. You have to fight. Oh yeah, I already mentioned this in some video that I've already uploaded, which I think was my part 0 or pre-part 1 or whatever in the world. But how I finally literally very recently, like a couple weeks ago, actually started to understand why so many people see the whole idea of spiritual warfare and demonic attacks or whatever you want to call it as like problematic. Now, aside from the people that just believe all that stuff isn't real and is crazy, I really have started to understand why people feel like it's not really healthy or a good thing to believe that, okay, you have to fight the sexual predators, your mom, your dad, grandpa, the priest, the dude down the street, the bullies at school, and you have to fight 13 demons that you can't see through spiritual warfare that you have to learn to be good at. Pretty much, like, to describe it better, to try to. I get why people don't like the idea that you have to fight what you can see, and then there's this unseeable spiritual battle where you have to fight 13 people you can't see standing in the corner or above your head somewhere, and that's what's causing all your problems, and you have to figure out how to fight them if you ever want your life to get better. I can get how that can be really stressful and lead to all types of issues. And I get why a lot of people don't like that now. I could never understand that before, but now I do. And it was something else I wanted to say with that, but I can't remember what it was. Oh yeah, and then I made a note before I really start reading the actual bullet points. I made a note of a comment that I seen, like, this was a couple of days ago because I'm chronically online. And this dude was like, and this was a quote-unquote black dude too, so that made it even more interesting since we're typically the ones that are really gonna still, like, believe in the supernatural. He was like, if Satan was real, he would have came to your house and killed you by now. That comment was funny though, but it's like, honestly, really the premise is supposed to be that humans have, due to sin nature, we've fallen to a state where we can't connect with the creator yet like we used to be able to in the very beginning, and then Satan's hiding somewhere to play this, like, mind game. Okay, so it turned off because it can't record in background, but my phone wasn't even turned off, so I don't know. But I don't know where it cut off at. The last thing I was talking about was the comment that I seen where a guy was like, if Satan was real, he would have came to your house and killed you by now. And that's really not true, because generally it's really just supposed to be this, like, manipulative game. And that goes back to what I say. If I haven't realized anything else, literally everything is about manipulation. But I'm not going to really go into that any further before this turns off again. And I just want to, like, go ahead and start reading the bullet points. What does this say? Thought started. Oh, yeah. I really wanted to say this too. I've been thinking about this for years. I did forget about it for a little minute, but I should have said this in my part 0, to be honest. So, as I've said before, funny enough, I'm not going to go too into details on this because I don't want to get too somewhere else and start, like, going into too many trauma dumps, but I know typically, okay, wait a minute, for one, with melanated people, especially true Yashirel, like I am, because I'm a Bantu, we generally just have, like, the belief in the creator, at least to a certain extent, and the supernatural drilled into us. I know I've talked about what I like to call the white supremacist philosophy of atheism a lot throughout the years, really, and how, like, the now called Europeans, I guess, and those different people, like the Mediterraneans, that are people that now try to run under the white label, they believed in themselves, humanism. They believed in what they eventually called white supremacy, the biggest religion in the world, and that really stems from their belief in humanism and what the Greeks would call know thyself. And to make a long story short, they consider believing in the supernatural for poor people, poor brown people, stupid, poor brown third world people, schizo, N-words, and stuff like that. They actually call it religious fervor. So on a large scale, quote unquote, Caucasian people or whatever in the world, they don't believe in any of that stuff, and they're largely atheists. A lot of them have been going back to their pagan roots for years. I mean, honestly, Protestant and pagan Roman Catholicism, Christendom is paganism, but not going to go into that. But yeah, they're largely atheist, and they don't like to believe in anything outside of their self, and they rather believe in their flipped around history and stuff. So I wanted to put that part out there, that typically melanated people in general, but especially true Yashirel, are going to believe in, like, the creator and the supernatural, regardless of actually really being, like, raised up in some religion and being told or being forced to go to some crazy church where people are running around screaming, jumping out windows and stuff. So the other thing I wanted to really get into with that is that, not to sound like some weird holy roller, I don't even like that stuff, and I'm not a Christian anyways, if no people didn't already know that. But, well, shoot, I used to have so many arguments about this some months back, because these replacement theory white Christian dudes that come in my comment sections arguing with me all the time, which just shows that nobody cares about the real point of the content, quote unquote content. I don't even like that word. But anywho, so I believed in quote unquote God. I don't like enough of a name doctrine, but I believed in Yah or whatever. Specifically as I can remember since 4. That's where my memories, or well, shoot, where the least traumatizing memories start. Well, I don't even know what to say about that. But yeah, since I was 4, like I remember there was this whole time where I had this sheet blanket with skies and clouds on it, and I had said this prayer when I was 4 for me to always remember my blanket. It's honestly really corny, but for me to always remember my blanket because it reminded me of what the place I lived in looked like before I was born. So like in the clouds and in the heaven dimension. And I wanted to always remember that because it reminded me of before I was born, and that was the only good place. Now whether I'll end up back in that place, I could hope. So, what else was I gonna say with that? What was the other thing? Oh yeah, I remember the point I was supposed to be getting that crap. Okay, so I have to read it again. So yeah, my relatives, well my dad's mom did like have the typical once they start to get old, they start being like some type of, well, I won't even say super Christian to be honest, but they start trying to be Christian. But other than that, my dad was always saying he was God. I even used to have this video on my Part 1 channel, my Part 1 Abuse Evidence channel, before CPS snitched and got some deleted, where my dad he just started manifesting. He went on this rant about he had been alive for over 5,000 years, and he was like, I've been alive for over 5,000 years, and he started threatening me and his girlfriend, and his girlfriend was like, you know what, you and her mom keep saying she's retarded and all that, but I feel like you're crazy and you need to be locked up somewhere taking some medicine, and I ought to tell the social worker how crazy you're talking right effing now. And I was literally just on the phone with my baby sister. She's 12 now, but I don't know how old she was, and I guess probably really young. She still remembers so many different bull craps that happened with our dad, to be honest. And we were talking about this, and she was like, uh, what was her name? Kiki. That's what we were calling her, that girlfriend, because there was like 10. There was 10. Kiki, TT, another TT, Kenya, anywho. She was like, Kiki had asked me whose side I was on, which is so toxic, because, like, I don't know how old she was, but that's just so toxic. And Kiki asked my baby sister whose side she was on, and she was like, she was on our dad's side, but she was crying and saying she wanted them to stop arguing because she was scared. And then Kiki had got mad at her and started cursing her out for being on our dad's side. But it's like, I mean, what do you expect from a little kid anyways? But anywho, yeah. So my dad was always saying he was God, because I went into a whole trauma dump and forgot my point again, which I guess is kind of the point of these channels at this point. My mom's boyfriend was always saying he was God. I was always getting told I was crazy for like believing in the supernatural at all. I wasn't allowed to read the Bible or go to church, but I knew by 8 that no. Well, yeah, I knew by 8 to 10, because I liked researching stuff so much, and I was like piecing so much stuff together that the things that I had realized and learned aren't even like or accepted or talked about in mainstream churches, and that they don't believe the Bible or even believe in the supernatural for real. One of my first issues with the church, starting at 7, and even kind of younger, but I didn't start going to church till 8 with like my grandma, was that, no, maybe not 8, it was either 8 or 9. But anywho, the point is that they didn't cast out demons, and I was really, really demon possessed at that point in time. with like the sex demons from the sexual addiction, and I had got like really, really bad. And that was one of my first issues with the church. And then I would get, when I was living with my mom and her boyfriend, they would always tell me that if I read the Bible, or if I watched anything about the Bible, or anything like supernatural or spiritual, that they were gonna like tell the doctors. And then my mom had told my siblings that if they ever caught me watching anything spiritual, to tell her. And then I would get beat up, and then I got slapped in the face for not wanting to eat pork. I got slapped in the face for wanting to go back to just old Northeast African customs and wanting to like be a part of like my ethnic identity and stuff. And so there was all of that. So for most people, because the point that I'm getting at revolves around this, for most people, they're like forced to believe in this stuff, but I already did. People could try to make it about my dad's mom, but honestly, that was whatever, to be honest. And I didn't really, I mean, I knew religion was an NWO, and really, especially like by 12 to 14, especially 14, I remember I was telling a bunch of people, back when I used to talk to other people before my abuse situation, well, no, it had already got really isolated by then, but I only got to go to elementary. So I was still talking to like old people the last people I met, pretty much, the last kids I had met, about the different things with the Catholic Church's truth and all of that. And like, I knew that religion was false, and like, especially like the past year, I've talked more about something that a lot of people are talking about, which is the fact that the whole point of the church and Christianity, and you could even say Islam, was to make the world hate quote unquote God, which is an ineffable name doctrine. It can mean anybody anyways. And so this goes into the other point that I wanted to make. Since I was so demonized and I was having so many issues with lust, perversion, and limerence or romantic obsessions, especially in elementary. Like, I almost got kicked out of school. It was so bad, and I was sexually acting out so bad due to that. And like, it was just a lot of stuff with that. Because I don't want to get too off topic, since the video is supposed to be about did I become an atheist in 6 months. But I talk about it in my hypothetically paraphilia videos, but I still feel like I haven't went that in depth into all of it in a video since 14. But anywho, crap, what was I gonna say about that? Oh yeah, I used to always be jealous since I was 7 and I started to watch YouTube like all the time. I would always be jealous of people that had these like radical deliverance testimonies. I would always be like, you know what? It seems like I really need to become an atheist. I needed to be an atheist first and really not believe, and then start believing, to have this radical deliverance where like the demons just radically come out and I get over all my sexual issues. And then of course, I've been wanting to make a video about this in general, which is so it's so irrelevant, but just generally how like I used to think that, oh, people just feel some type of way about me. Like when I was in elementary, people just feel some type of way about me. Oh my gosh, my voice is cracking. Cause I'm always sexually acting out and like I'm a pervert and all that. Even though the average person really is, a lot of kids are too, cause we're just in a hypersexual society. But I just thought that like once I get over these issues, then I'll be good. Then I'll be delivered fully, but then the more like I already knew about like DID and MPDs and stuff then, but the more I researched DID and CPTSD, the more I realized that honestly, I still have MPDs and all types of stuff going on. But I used to think that was my only issue, and that like once I got over that, then I'd be good. But I even started to realize a hot minute before I even knew running away would end up working out, and I even run away, and that I would really build up the courage to do it. I had already started to feel like by then, near the end of my situation, that honestly, if I fix one issue, something else would just pop up. But yeah, I used to think that would like fix everything and it would fix all my problems, which also shows that I was still at that point in time. This is when I was still, before I was double digits. I was still trying to like block out all the issues from the abuse and the isolation and the being in situations where I don't even get the chance to really develop social skills still to this day, or be around people my age still to this day. So like, I was just thinking, it's not just the fact that I'm just socially awkward and then that's just off-putting to people. And also there was some racial stuff as well, which was kind of like the side thing. And it was something else. It was something else with that. What else was it? And then just the fact that certain people are just different, and that's just what it is. It's not really anything you can do about that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That I had those issues, and I thought that like that was the end all be all. And if I could fix that and get delivered, then I'd be better, and then I would be able to like make friends, and then I would finally have somebody to care about me and love me like nobody else did. My parents don't. And day by day, I'm still trying to accept the fact that none of that is real. But I'm not even really sure how realistic that is. And it's like, I do believe that some people's radical deliverance stories are real, but as I want to go into, generally a lot of people are pressured to fake being delivered, just like how even Pastor Stephen Darby would talk about in his videos. One of the biggest pressure in churches is to fall. And that's depending on if you're in one where they're like doing all that fake, I don't even know what they could call themselves doing. In fact, I know when I used to watch a lot of these types of videos, it wasn't even that long ago either. It's still kind of recent, I think. Mark the Messenger would make these videos reacting to other people's videos where they were like having these crazy church sessions where like people were just chaos in church theatrics, like people faking falls and throwing rags around. If I remember right, a video of like some dude hitting somebody in the head or face with a rag or something, and then the person fell on it was some weird stuff. It was just a mess. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say about that, but I just remember I always used to be so jealous, and I would just feel like, dang it, I should become an atheist, or I should have just tried to not believe or pretend that I didn't believe, so I could be radically delivered and my life could change and be better. I used to just think that all the time, and I kind of forgot about that for a little while. So I'm trying to think about what else. Okay, one. First bullet point, unfortunately. Realizing how problematic people feeling the need to lie for quote-unquote God is. Example, quote-unquote, no God doesn't kill babies, quote-unquote. Christian people don't know the Bible or understand supernatural laws or how they work enough to know what happened and why, or even just that the Bible is a discrepatory book, not just telling you what to do. And that's a big thing that's pushed by the European hijacking of Christendom, especially Protestant and Gentiles and in Christianity. The idea that the Bible isn't also like part history, even though it's been so destroyed by the Protestant and Catholicism, and most of it has been taken out and rewritten in all types of bullcrap by the Europeans and just different people that I guess would now be considered quote unquote white, pretty much. I still don't like how they just try to make it seem like a book about some good guy walking around telling people good things to do, and just a book about hope and freedom and happiness, and none of that is even really that true. And that even goes back to how much they hate the Old Testament and they hate the Creator, Yah, but they run around talking about quote-unquote Jesus, whoever that is, because there was no J sound, but not even going to go into that. Okay, hold it. There's a cockroach running towards me. Wait a minute. And that generally just goes into how, like, they just took the essence and the people out of the book, which goes into replacement theory, and just turned it into, like, kind of like their little, like, their old folktale type poems. They just took it and turned it into, like, some bullcrap about pretty much just quote-unquote how to be a good person, and that's not... The concept of a good person isn't even real. I don't even like that. Typically, people who believe in... I mean, I just don't like that for a lot of reasons, and just the realities of the world that I know and see. Although I have met people, especially like recently with this one guy, that definitely are those like really true pure souls, but those people are destroyed and taken out and locked up by society and left out of society to die on the side of the road. So yeah, I just generally don't believe in the concept of a good person. I hate psych labels, but everybody runs around talking about psychopaths and sociopaths. Technically, by psychiatry standards, ODD, or being a quote-unquote sociopath, does not want to allow people to abuse you or abuse others. And so by psychiatry standards, Batman is a sociopath, even though his self-defense skills are bottom tier because he doesn't really like to harm people, so he lets people continue on in their chaos. But generally, everybody's raised to be quote-unquote psychos and lack empathy. Literally, having empathy is considered a gift. Having sympathy is considered a gift. People who are actually nice and have empathy and really care about people and will see somebody crying and be like, "Are you okay?" We label them off as crazy and retarded. They get told they have a learning disability in society. And people are generally taught and programmed to either be a victim or a perpetrator or both, never to be a hero to themselves or others. So the whole good person, nice person thing, like the people that typically run around saying they're a good person, they're a predatory person trying to make themselves sound good to get victims, or there's somebody who technically is covertly predatory because they're codependent, which is unintentional manipulation, but they're also people pleasing. And as I learned, especially by 10, that gets you nowhere. And that's exactly why I say I feel like running away and being homeless is something that I really needed to continue to be reminded that nobody gives a crap about me or anybody, and that I need to give a crap about myself and keep focusing on helping and saving myself. Because as much as you want to be that person that's there for everybody else and that's being the unpaid therapist for everybody else throughout your whole life, people aren't going to do that same thing back to you. And either you're going to stay in that cycle and stay stuck in bad situations due to that, or you're going to stop doing that and start treating other people how they treat you and stop being the stupid person that you want to be nice to people that don't give a crap about you, and the same people that you're giving $300 to when you have it, when you typically don't have anything or typically starving, are the same people that'll watch you freeze to death or almost freeze to death in the cold and have to go to the hospital because you got frostnip and almost died because you already have poor circulation. That sounds oddly specific. I'm talking way too fast, but yeah, because I was getting mad and passionate all at the same time. So, yeah, that's that. That's life. Don't be the quote unquote nice person because that's not real. You're just a stupid person letting people run all over you. And you're probably just doing stuff to make yourself feel better. And if you're religious, you're probably just doing stuff using somebody as like a charity case and running around saying, "Oh, look at what I'm doing for this person," like a "let me help you lunatic," as I call them, because you think it's your way into heaven because you believe in once saved, always saved, / your good deeds outweigh your bad deeds, which is really Aleister Crowley's "do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law," because Christians worship Satan and all religions worship Satan, and religion is a broad path to hell and NWO. So they all believe in the same thing, but they just say it in different ways. So the people that say that all of it leads to the same path, that the religious people call stupid or false or heathens, you're not wrong. All of it is leading to hell. And I even remember when I was locked up in my last cash for kids system placement, or my human cash cow system placement before last, the first time I tried to run away, there was this one girl in there who was talking about some y'all need Jesus. First of all, if you weren't in an abuse situation being abused by whoever is taking you to church, you wouldn't even be in here. But that's besides the point. This one boy was like, "No, don't do that God SHIT with me. I don't play that God SHIT." And even the staff said you're not allowed to talk about religion or Christianity especially, which is ironic since we could watch witchcraft movies, but I get why people are like that though. The whole point of Christianity especially was to get people to hate quote unquote God, whoever, whatever that means. And I just get why so many people react like that, and I get why so many people hate Christians. Although it's weird that people hate Christians but not also Islam, because they're both branches of Catholicism to be honest, and I just could say so much about that. But all of it is really bullcrap. And so, where was I at? Okay, defend. No, I think I already read that. Need to just. I always had the discrepatory book. I know that's the last thing I remember reading. Okay, so. Crap. Is a discrepatory book not just telling you what to do? So people in Christendom often feel they have to lie for and defend quote unquote God because they secretly hate him and his ways and see him as evil and mean and all that stuff. So they feel the need to just cover up his deeds because they do not see them as righteous or just either. And example, the whole flood thing, people will say, so if God brought the flood, doesn't that mean that he killed babies and infants and stuff like that? And then Christians will be like, well, no, that's not true, because look, you either believe it or you don't. It's not really all that. You either believe it or you don't. And then they go on these stupid rants trying to lie for him because they don't really see his deeds as righteous, because they really hate the creator, y'all, anyways. And that's the big thing with Christians. And they also don't even get the whole point of the flood, and they don't even know the real backstory, because the church removed most of the books, which is that when the fallen angels came down, they were making all the Nephilim hybrids, and half of everybody was a Nephilim hybrid and weren't even full-blood humans anymore. And that was the big thing with the reason for the flood anyways. But they don't even know that. And obviously, yes, babies would have been killed too. And the thing with Christians is that you either see quote unquote God as evil or you don't. There's no point in lying about what he did. You either believe it or you don't. You either like him or you don't. Which actually reminds me of something else I wanted to say. Due to all the abuse and neglect, I can say that I'm pretty sure, at least before, like, when I was under 7, or especially under, well, yeah, 7 and younger, under 7, I can say that I did love my quote-unquote dad. I wasn't around my mom, and I would say that even the trauma in the womb would, like, lead to maybe me just not feeling a lot of emotions, but just due to that, wait a minute, I didn't even finish what I was saying, but, I'm screwing this up. What was I saying? I'm trying to figure out how to put this together. So, like, pretty much, I've never loved anybody, nobody's ever loved me. Now, when it comes to the same-sex attraction and all that stuff, even back then I knew that it was a trauma symptom. I know for a lot of people I say, and I knew for me especially, it was due to, like, the mommy issues. But then also just due to, like, abuse, neglect, and even just wiring and maybe having just a sexually addictive personality. I remember especially when I was in 3rd to 5th grade. When I was in 3rd to 5th grade, I had really, really bad limerence obsessions and romantic obsessions with other girls, but I've never had one with a guy, and I only ever had them with people that, I only ever have them with people who really don't like me. Like, they have to be really emotionally unavailable or just straight up hate me, at least eventually hate me, for me to actually have a limerence obsession with them and for them to be a FP. And so in elementary, I had those really bad. And I can make a whole video about this because it's really a lot to go into. I used to talk about this all the time at 14 and even younger, but in the videos, especially in support groups at 14, online. But I knew that it was, back then I only really knew about the lust and perversion spirits. I didn't know, like, as in depth about the marine kingdom as I started the research at 12 to 14, especially 14. So I didn't know that in depth about that. So I was just thinking, oh, lust and perversion spiritual, it's just like love, and this is just like how I feel. But then I also knew that really it just can't be love. But there's a lot that I could say about that, but I don't want to get too somewhere else. But the point is, I knew that I really didn't know how to love anybody, and nobody loved me, and I never have been loved or loved anybody for real, just had limerence. And so the point is, I always, like, I read the commandments, I knew the Bible and all that stuff, and I liked reading it. And I always heard people talking about how you have to love God, but all your, quote-unquote God, but all your heart, mind, and soul. But I was always like, but I don't have the ability to love because I've been so neglected and abused, and was being so neglected and abused. even still after running away, I feel like just constantly being reminded that nobody cares, it just keeps the trauma going. So like, I've just had attachment issues and stuff so bad, and have never actually had a secure attachment to anybody, and haven't loved anybody before I've been loved. And it's like, well, if I don't have the ability to love, then I don't really love God. And so I used to be like, especially before I was double digits and even at 10 and stuff, I would be like, so does that mean that I go to hell? Because like I want to love quote unquote God, but I don't actually have the ability to. I don't really feel a lot of emotion because I'm being emotionally neglected and stuff. So it's like, does this mean I would go to hell, or will he be understanding for that? And the fact that even though I think I love him and I want to, but I really don't have the ability to. And there's a lot that I could say about that. It even reminds me of the whole situation. This was literally just like a few years ago, in like 2023 or 2024, with somebody telling me about how I remind them of the people with dissociative identity disorder / DID that they do deliverance on, and how one of the things that can sometimes keep people from being delivered is unknowingly having one of their multiple personalities not liking God. And I was trying to say, I don't even know how I was trying to put it, but yeah. So, and that was interesting to me because especially since 12, I did used to sometimes wonder if I like secretly hated him for all the stuff that was happening and just didn't know it. But there's a lot that I could even say about that. But yeah. So that reminded me of that, and I didn't want to throw that in there. And then also, this revolves around thing that I just read as well. Another thing with Christians not understanding supernatural laws and how all that stuff works is that people will often ask, if God is real, then why did this happen, and why does that happen, and why does this and that? They don't even know how to answer that question. They just say they don't know if they're honest, or they just say, well, they just curse the person out and be like, oh, you need to stop blaming God for stuff, and you gotta this, that. But the thing is, like, you really can't do that, because I think that also one of the things is that if somebody actually reads the Bible, I could get how somebody could read the Bible, look back to cover, like a lot of people say that they do, and then stop believing or just start to feel some type of way about it. Because for one, if you believe in the falsehoods of religion, you're going to be like, okay, wait a minute. None of the stuff that's in here is ever talked about in church, and none of the stuff that's going on in church is said, does the Bible say should happen. They're doing a lot of stuff that they shouldn't be doing. In fact, especially if they're in like Catholicism, they're definitely going to be like, okay, wait a minute. Nothing that's going on here is supposed to be happening. And that alone makes a lot of people become atheists. But also, even without that, people just reading it and being like, you know what, I really don't agree with this. And also, like, one of the things with it is that if you read it, you'll see that, like, it does say that, quote-unquote, God, with the ineffable name doctrine, all the translation bullcrap, is in control of the Lord, quote-unquote. All things happen for the good of those that believe in him, and in different verses like that technically do say that he's in control. But also, one of the things about it is that humans were given dominion over the earth, and we actually are gods over the planet. But of course, they're not going to admit that in religion, because they don't want you to know that you were a god, and that's in the Bible too. And that's actually one of a lot of people who don't believe in Christianity. That's like actually a lot of people's favorite verse. There's 2 or 3 that where this is quoted, but the one that I remember is something like, is it not written in your law that all of you are children of God and ye are gods? And that's a quote from Jesus, quote unquote Jesus. But anywho, we have dominion over the earth and we are God. So everything that happens because we let it happen and we do it. If we wanted something to stop happening, like if we really cared and wanted to step in and like stop this issue and stop that issue, we could, and we have dominion to do it. Everything can only happen from the quote unquote elites to the bottom because you let it happen. We are gods. Quote unquote Satan only works by majority rule. The elites only work by majority rule. Literally the Hegelian dialect and universal law, especially when it comes to predictive programming in media and stuff, in these movies and these video games, they have to tell us what they're doing for them to be able to do it. And if we don't rebel and stop them and turn back to the creator, we're in agreement with it. Nothing can happen unless we agree. I know once in a Reddit support group, somebody had asked me, if God is real, then why does he allow you to suffer? And I just said, one of the things about it is that what was it that I said? Pretty much what does or doesn't happen doesn't negate the fact that the creator and the supernatural all exist. And I think that was really my only response. I don't really think I said anything else. I mean, I could say, if anybody else is real, then why do we hurt each other? Why do we allow stuff to happen to people? Because everybody's fake, that's why. In fact, I know I said in some other video, I can't remember exactly what I said, but it's like, nobody cares. That's really the reason that things happen, because nobody gives a crap. It was something like that, pretty much, to summarize. But the thing about it is that Christians don't know that. They don't understand these principles and laws. We all have free will, and people can do what they want to each other. And it still is bullcrap, though, because, like, there's the verses about the little ones that believe in him, the millstone tied around the person's neck. People use that verse all the time when they claim to care about child abuse, depending on what they consider a child at that point in time and what they consider abuse and who it's from, because if it's by a parent or a family member, then it's okay and it's discipline, quote unquote. But it says little ones that believe in him, though. So it does make me think, like, well, what about the ones that don't believe or don't know? But I do know, since I've read the Apocrypha, not all of it, but like a couple books, there were like a lot of verses about the issue of SA and trafficking, stuff like that, that of course were taken out by Christianity, funny enough. And a lot of people get mad when, like, quote unquote GAY guys especially point out the fact that a lot of the verses that people now use to make it about being homo, which, I mean, that still is a perversion. It still is a trauma symptom. But a lot of the verses that have been translated to be used for that were actually about Greek and Roman chomos and them essaying young guys. They really were about that, and they really were translated to be made about something else, to be made just about same-sex attraction, but they were about abusing kids and stuff like that, and trafficking as well, in general, people of any age as well. But those were translated by design. And just a lot of verses about the issue of human torture, except slavery, were taken out. Which, slavery for melanated people wasn't like the MK Ultra, Virgo Vassal / buck break and sodomy ritual slavery that was done by the serpent seed Europeans anyways. A lot of people talk about how the Bible okays slavery, but people seem to not get that what people are calling chattel slavery, which was really MK Ultra, that is different from, like, indentured servants and stuff like that was done by melanated people and stuff. Which even goes back to the whole thing of Christians making the book about them and pretending that quote unquote now called white people, which weren't even called white people then, wrote the book. But oh well, I guess. And it goes into the whole thing that the issue of religion. I don't know what to say with that. Two vids where I go over all my experiences of scams, ageism, and weird abusive stuff with Christians before and especially since running away. I already knew pagan Roman Catholicism was false. Then their Protestant is also false after just thinking mainstream church was false. But the point of religion is to make the world hate the Most High, and religion is NWO. I now get why all my relatives would go on rants about how evil Christians are and how much they hate them. It also makes me think about that dude that's been known to go around stalking people that claim that they're targeted individuals. Really just people who are like, they've been abused their whole life and are still being abused by people. Some have developed like paranoia and some delusional type stuff due to their trauma, but a lot of those people still are being abused by whoever. But that dude that went around stalking people for years and used to be in my comment section, what was his name? He had a couple different accounts. It was something weird, like Frank, no, something Chief Handler owns you, that dude. I don't even know how people respond to him. They're just giving him attention and making him keep going at them and keep stalking them and doing weird stuff. He was posting people's addresses, making fun of people's dead kids, and posting their gravestones and everything. He claims he's a veteran and he works for ICE, but anywho, the point of me mentioning him is that he always would like talk about quote unquote Sky Daddy and how he doesn't need imaginary friends, not to me but to other people, and how he doesn't believe in that stuff. But one of the funny things about him that just came to my mind that also reminds me of my relatives is that he acts just like the Christian people that he hates. And especially for him, he acts just like the racist white Christian people that he claims to hate. I mean, obviously he is racist and he hates lower level Caucasians as well, but he acts just like the Christian nationalists that he hates so much, supposedly. Which is one of the funny things about how, with the fact that people are raised to be either victims or perpetrators or both, people typically end up becoming like what hurt them or worse to survive in this world, or to survive around their abusive family members or whoever. And so, point of religion. Okay, crap. What did all my relatives go on these rants about how they hate Christians? How much they hate them and project all that onto me. And that was the funny thing, because I didn't consider myself a Christian, but since they felt like I was, or I made them, I mean, they just hated me in general and I was a scapegoat. So they needed to make up some reason to abuse me, but they would always project all that stuff onto me. And yeah, I was always told, even by randoms, that I'm too old to believe in that stuff. And one day, I won't anymore. Also, the quote-unquote Bible in church. Oh yeah. There was this whole thing near the early part of my Munchausen syndrome by proxy when my mom would sit around watching I Am Jazz. That horrifying show of that little boy who was forced to become transgender and go through a surgery, and people just make fun of him still, and they talk about how now he's obese, and people will say things like, that's what happens when you give a kid whatever they want. That was the show about, it reminds me of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid book, the Jezebelic mom and the Ahab spirit dad that just lets the mom sit back and do whatever she wants. Especially because they both got paid by on the TV show, which goes into what I've always said for years now, since 12 to 14. Shows like Dr. Phil, the Karamo Therapist, Calamari Productions, Beyond Scared Straight Girls Incarcerated, those different prison documentaries, those are part of the cash for kids system and the human cash cow systems. People's abuse situations, people's bad situations are other people's entertainment. People just sit back and laugh and say, at least that's not me, or at least I'm not a bad kid. Nobody cares. And that's kind of the point. And anywho, my mom would sit back and watch I Am Jazz all day because she wanted to learn how to do Munchausen syndrome by proxy, but you don't really have to learn how to do it. These doctors' jobs, especially when it comes to the mental health system, is to do Munchausen syndrome by proxy and create an issue that isn't already there. Their job is to see a little molested girl and say, oh, your molestation trauma symptoms while you're actively being molested, that's bipolar disorder, or that's autism, or that's OCD, or you just want to shower all day because you have OCD. It doesn't matter that you think you're dirty now because you've been told that since you were molested and you're no longer a virgin, now you're a dirty sinner and all that stuff. And that's why you're constantly showering all the time, because you feel like you can never get clean due to your SA trauma, which is a really common thing. That didn't happen to me though, because people seem to think that, I mean, I've been told my whole life that I only care about these things because they happen to me, because people feel like I shouldn't talk about things that haven't happened to me because I shouldn't care, because I should only care about what affects me, because that's how most people think, because people are psychopaths, as they like to say, these stupid made up psych labels. Anyhow, other thing with that, what else was it? Okay, hold on. Oh yeah, but anywho, to get to the point, there was this one point in time when I was 12, because that's when all this stuff started, and then the main parts of this abuse ended by like late 13. It started at mid 12 to like early 14, late 13, or pretty much late 13. And in the early parts, there was a whole situation where my mom told some doctor something about me reading the Bible, and she was like, God in the Bible is a part of my unknown trauma that caused all my mental health issues. I was mainly being told that I was retarded though, so like I don't really know, but yeah. So generally I was told that I was too old to believe in all that stuff, and I should know better by now. And even up until the point of me running away, up until the point of me running away, my mom's boyfriend would always be like, as you get older, you're going to start to see that all that stuff isn't real, and all these people, these Christian people that you look up to, were all crusaders. And it's like, I didn't even consider myself a Christian. That was the craziest thing about it. And I already knew about the crusade history and all the stuff with the Europeans forcing people to convert. And I've even learned more about that in recent years, aside from the whole Knights Templar Freemason Catholic Church mess. Even the thing with like true Hebrews being forced to get baptized and how baptism is really bull crap. But I'm not even going to go into that because it's not the point of this. Although I will say that to a certain extent, I almost couldn't really care for any of it anymore because it's like nobody really cares. These people in the church don't care about anybody, which I forgot to start the video off actually by talking about, again, the whole thing with the Catholic Church human trafficking in their shelters. And I know I talked about a lady telling me or warning me about this a while back. I know I've recently talked about that little girl that disappeared. People said that they saw her last was going with some guy, and nobody gives a crap about her because she's quote unquote fast and grown. Even this little boy who got kicked out, he disappeared too. Hopefully he went back to some friend's house, or maybe his mom let him go back home. Obviously she wasn't safe though, but of course, I mean, once you're in this type of situation, if you were in a situation where you weren't isolated due to your abuse and you were able to make friends, people will start to back out, and people's parents aren't going to want to take you in oftentimes. Because one of the things about it, people like to say, oh, you burned your bridges. But one of the things about it, when you're young, it's not about living with friends. It's about living with friends' parents unless you're moving in with some choma. And I mean, even like older guys are out here getting gang raped. And anywho, to get to the point, actually, because I was forgetting, this one guy I know, he was telling me about how pretty much he's scared to go back to this one Catholic place because, as typical, as happens every day, all day, some guys driving around trying to grab people, snatch people up to have sex with them. And obviously he got asked, and that's how it goes. And that's how a lot of these men and women and young people go missing, and they don't care. Like I even said a couple months ago, one of the people that works at the Catholic shelter told me that she feels like this dude that goes there all the time was kidnapping people and feeding them to his pigs on his farm, because she said that the last time some people got in his car, she never saw them again. And she told me not to talk to him about working on his farm, because he was talking to some other guy about going to do some work for him on the farm. And then he talked to me too. And he was just trying to sell me his idea and tell me that he's safe and all that, but I wasn't going for that. But that's what was happening. And it's like, okay, so you know that you didn't report it to anybody. Not that the police would care. They're all traffickers and pedos anyways. But you don't report it to anybody, and then you let people hop in that car. And honestly, that dude that hopped in his car, and this was one of a 45-year-old, 50-year-old man that hopped in his car. I haven't seen him again either since then. So I don't know, but it's all really messed up. And he was telling me about how, like, these church people aren't good people and they just don't care. And I mean, yeah, that's obvious. And I think that's an unfortunate thing if you, like, think that these people are, like, your friends or something, because he sees himself as a Christian, or more so as a follower of Jesus, and, like, he wants to, like, get along with these people. But these people are they don't give a crap about anybody. They don't love you. They don't care about you. Who does really care about anybody for real? Anywho, believe that stuff in, you already read all that. 3, quote unquote, if God is real, what? Oh, no, I already said that one. I didn't even know I wrote that down. I wrote, I guess the same reason everyone else does. So the whole, if God is real, why does he allow you to suffer, quote unquote? My new reply to that, if, like, that was asked to me again by that guy, I wrote, I guess the same reason everyone else does. 4, white churches talk about white Jesus and replacement theory, which replacement theory is pretty much the idea that who true Yashrael or the true Hebrews are doesn't, now they say the J word, but who those people are doesn't even matter anymore, because the Christians are the new chosen people, and the promise and the new covenant is for them now, which is very false. That's what replacement theory is, to summarize. Which I kind of thought, I kind of talked about that at the end of my last video, where I talked about how some gospel song where the people were like, what was it? It was something like we are. No. I mentioned some song that I heard playing on this radio station at this Christian resource center that was like that this is the sound of the dry bones or something like that, and it's like, no, it's not. Whatever that sound or quote unquote this sound is, that's not the sound of the dry bones. The dry bone verse is about true Yashra waking up to their identity and the Hebrews regathering and realizing who they are again. That's what the dry bones verse actually means. Christians, and especially the Europeans, the Gentiles, they have misconstrued the Bible so horribly. The little 2% of it that you have left, it's like, crap, you got 2% left and you can't even get that right. And then I also think about the Christian dating app called Salt, which revolves around the "You are the salt of the earth" verse. That was not about Christians. That was about true Yasharel. I mean, yeah, like the believers are grafted in, and true Yasharel was unfaithful, and so the Gentiles and stuff were drafted in, and even the Rev 29s are pretending to be the people to make the natural branches jealous and turn back to the Creator, or turn back to Yah. And that's kind of the point of all that, but it's still like, that's not what those verses meant. Especially the dry bones one. I mean, yeah. I was confused for a second. I was thinking about just the song. But, yeah. Before I make this more confusing trying to over-explain. So, wait a minute. And then, black churches talk about Africans. They talk junk about Africans all day. And they talk about beating up kids all day. 5. Although there are some southern churches that are like known for having like these white pastors go on rants about why you should beat up women. But anywho, just, yeah. 5, never heard a Catholic church or a white church preach a real sermon. And there's that. That's just it. That's the reality. Never heard a Catholic church preach especially. 6. Oh yeah, but it's also like, it's funny because like they become Freemasons, they go to these bullcrap seminary schools for years, which it's stupid to even pay for a Christian college or Christian school. But they go to this and then they still can't preach jack because they're not anointed or called to, which technically anybody that believes should be able to preach something. But some people have more of a call in their life than others. And like, it kind of reminds me of like how Missy Darby would talk about people would inbox her, like these white pastors would inbox and message her talking about how they were trying to learn how to preach like Pastor Stephen Darby, but they couldn't because that's an anointing that made him be able to preach the way that he could. And, well, I don't really care for that stuff anymore, honestly, at this point. It still is the reality of it. And it's like, these people shouldn't be quote-unquote preaching. These churches are bull crap. And, they don't know what they're talking about. They're trying to make up things, and that's why you'll notice that, like, especially since running away, I made it my business to, like, go in these different churches and stuff and take notes. And I have never even heard, like, them preach a sermon. Like, in the Catholic Church, they'll, like, sing a little bit. They'll sing these scary songs, do these little scary rituals, singing these high-pitched little notes, and do this, like, black satanic mass type stuff. But they don't preach anything at all. Like, you're lucky if you even hear anybody talk about anything serious, anything real. They don't preach. And I mean that so literally. And I generally have never heard a white church preach, and I have yet to see a white church where, like, anybody in there even really had an anointing to say anything real or true. And that can maybe even go into the, I mean, I know that there's obviously, like, anybody can have the anointing. I'm not trying to, like, make it a racial thing or, like, the Gentile bullcrap and try to, like, do all that stuff. Because, like I said, I mean, truth is truth, but I don't really care for this stuff too much anymore. But I can still say, these people generally don't have an anointing to even be doing what they call themselves trying to do. 6, homeless aren't allowed near churches. And then there's also a racial side that can go into that as well, depending on where you're at. I had to pause and forgot. And actually, like, this was some months back. I saw this Truth Unedited video, and I know that people are going to try to do the whole, oh, well, that's where you get your bullcrap knowledge from because you're sitting around listening to Truth Unedited, because I know that if anybody watches this, people will try to do this, and people have before. They'll try to do the whole, oh, well, you're just some stupid kid who's like, especially white people, because they get mad about this reality and how this isn't their book or their history. they'll try to do the whole, oh, you're just a kid who's been sitting up listening to somebody else's teachings, and it's like, no. And I don't even really, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I have watched some videos recently off and on, but it's still kind of like, I've been falling apart spiritually too much the past couple months and just starting to not care more and more to even really watch any of this stuff. And then it's like, I'm just so tired of hearing about a lot of stuff. I mean, I already knew that BLM was like a psyop, and that racial events that you see on the news are psyops to push for the race WAR agenda. I already knew that. I already knew BLM was false and ALM was false too, because nobody gives a crap about anybody. But it's like, I'm tired of hearing about that stuff, just like I'm tired of hearing about all the different spiritual religious stuff and a lot of other things, because it's like, I want to hear about somebody actually taking action and doing something, and people actually stepping up and helping people, and people coming together and doing stuff for each other. I don't even really care to hear about anything else at this point. And as far as I can hear, I mean, most of these people are pro-child abuse and domestic violence anyways, because that's just what they believe when it comes to religion. So it doesn't even really matter to me much anymore. But anywho, so a while ago, maybe even honestly a year ago, I saw this one Truth Unedited video where he was talking about how people get too caught up in what's called quote-unquote conspiracy theories, which I can debunk that term, don't even really care to at this point. But he was talking about how people get caught up in that, and how, like, and he said, are you really, like, trying to research to be prepared and aware, or are you just a fan of Satan? And that's funny that he said that, because I remember when I was 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, I did start to wonder, am I just, like, really interested in this occultic stuff to a certain extent? And that's why, like, I like researching, like, multiple personalities, DID, MK Ultra, and those types of things so much back when I really used to be into that. Because, I mean, with the fact that I started researching that stuff somewhat at 6, but more so 7, because that's when I really started to, like, get on the phone and all that, and, like, read those articles and watch those videos. I did wonder about that, but it's like, I get why people get to a certain point where they're just so fed up to where they don't really care for being on the light or the dark side. But I think the unfortunate thing about it is that you can't straddle the fence. And the way it really goes is that technically you're either worshiping the devil or you're worshiping the creator. And I really don't like how that is either. I get why a lot of people don't like that. Because it's kind of like, it's like you're being pulled back and forth, and it's like a puppet master thing, and you can't straddle the fence. Kind of like how I talked about how I understand why a lot of people don't like the idea of, like, the spiritual battle mess for many reasons, but it's also kind of like pretending that it's not real and not believing, and it doesn't save you from it. But there also is a certain point where you have to be like, well, what's really true and what's not really true? Like, what has a physical cause and what doesn't? Which reminds me of something else I forgot. In deliverance ministries where they know what they're talking about, kind of, they'll be like, if you're having some type of health issue or something, go to the doctor first and see if they can tell you what it is. Although when it comes to the mental health system bullcrap, the chemical imbalance thing isn't true. It's really just trauma symptoms, or maybe you have SIBO or H. pylori vitamin deficiencies. They're not going to tell you the truth when it comes to that stuff. They claim it's not spiritual, it's physical. But they try to separate it from physical health, but they won't tell you the actual physical causes, like blood sugar issues and hormonal issues and vitamin D deficiency and stuff that actually will cause it, or mold toxicity. They won't talk about or admit any of that. You have to go to, like, alternative med doctors to even hear those terms, which is funny. So they don't want to cure you, but they don't cure or treat anything in the mainstream medical system, which goes into my issue with this. Now, I've talked about how I've been, like, curing my chronic illness that I've had, especially since 14, because especially since 12, because it's mainly iatrogenic, but I got more sick by 14, which is when I dropped down to 80 pounds and got stuck there, and then everything went downhill from there. And I have a whole playlist about the different cures and fixes that I found for things, in my, especially my, what is it called, my How to Know If You Have Mitochondrial Dysfunction playlist, and then it was something else, what's the other thing with that? Oh yeah, but I remember, like, hearing that, like, this lady had brought her son to get deliverance, and she said that he started acting weird. And the deliverance ministry guy was like, well, did you take him to the doctor? And she was like, no. And then she found out that he actually had a brain tumor, and he was able to get cured of that. But it's like, okay, so for somebody like me, that for one, most of my issues were caused by the medical system and the others by my abuse. But since nobody's gonna save you from your abuse situation, they're just gonna be like, oh, well, you're just getting abused at home, as they would do, or we just feel like you're getting molested at home. So, which I wasn't, but they thought that I was because of my pelvic floor dysfunction, which was actually coming from SIBO H. pylori and the fact that I couldn't digest food, which would cause just different intestinal organs to push on stuff, and it would just cause a lot of weird issues, to summarize. And then also low blood sugar, messing up my pelvic floor strength and stuff. So, yeah, there was that. So it's like, when you're going through medical gaslighting, you can't get a doctor to answer you and give you any testing. Like, I only have been able to figure out the things that I have through, like, going through paywalls as a homeless kid that I shouldn't have had to go through anyways, because medical insurance pays for, like, some of the testing that I need, but then, like, I mean, like for colonoscopy, you can't really, it's hard to get that under 50. They don't really care, and it's just so much stuff I could say about that, but I don't want to get too somewhere else. But it's like, if you can't get answers from them, then, like, your only issue, if you even are into this type of stuff, would be to run to a deliverance minister who also can't give you any real answers or answer your question or even tell you if it's spiritual or not. And it's like, well, I mean, crap, if you can sense this and sense that and hear from that and hear from this and talk to this demon, then you should at least be able to tell somebody, well, this is either spiritual or it's physical or it's both. Which, I mean, I feel like with the trauma side, it could typically be both, but I figured out so much stuff the past few years, since before running away, and especially since running away, but yeah, more so since running away. Like, I pieced so much stuff together and found out so much stuff about what's actually causing my symptoms, to where it's like, okay, now stuff has been making sense. But then it's also kind of like, that doesn't make sense either, that explanation, because technically, the way it's supposed to really go is that even if something did have like a 100% spiritual cause, unless it's like, I don't know, some voodoo attack or something, maybe, like, it would still like show up in an MRI. Like, if a demon, I don't know, like a tumor demon or something, is giving you tumors, like, if you got an MRI or whatever, an X-ray, whatever you do for that, it would still show up there. It's not like the doctors wouldn't still be able to see it. So it's like, that doesn't really make sense, because even if something had a physical cause, then, like, technically you're supposed to still be able to get delivered or healed from it, or at least that's what I thought. That's how I thought it's supposed to go. So, like, that whole, if the doctor can see it, then it's not a demon thing, that didn't really make sense based off of, like, how things are technically said to go, if this is making sense. But I guess, I don't know, it's all really weird. So pretty much, like, for me, I wasn't able to get answers either way, so I was just really confused with that, and none of it made sense. I think I might have forgot to write that down, but that was something that I feel is important to mention. Okay, so I kind of already talked about this in my part 0, to be honest. Yeah, I already did. The rants about their guilt and shame, being in Christian environments, and having to have a chomo, a bug-eyed chomo, preach some sermon to you to be able to get, like, basic things from resource centers, like, oh, you got to listen to this chomo or this racist lady. I forgot that part. Going to rant about how much she loves Trump and all that stuff. And of course, the liberals are racist too. I'm not trying to, like, I already know left, right, mind, herding is false. All of it is fake, and both wings are on the same bird. But I'm just saying, listening to either or in these types of environments, and it's just, like, all really crazy and stupid. And you're just surrounded by chomo preachers, scary looking priests that obviously have all types of stuff going on. Feel unsafe, be touched all over, so people that call themselves believers and priests chasing you around asking you if you're legal and all this stuff. It's all mess and chaos. I already talked about the whole thing with the Chomo guy, and trying to get this lady to get her daughters on a podcast with him, and then he tried to just, like, switch up by saying, oh, it's a Christian podcast. Leave kids alone. Like, and he has a whole wife and a son at that, and you're trying to get with somebody's daughters and then make up some weird excuse. But I talked about that in my pre-part 1, I think. Well, actually, no, my pre-part 1 and a video I made about just paraphilias in general. So yeah, the Santa Cruz Chomo Priest situation. I don't even know if I should go back over this, but the whole, the typical manipulation that people would do when you're quote unquote homeless because they see it as what they would consider a rock bottom. Oh crap. I'm sitting outside of an abandoned building and a rat just tried to run by, but then it saw me and got scared. What was I saying though? I lost my whole train of thought due to that. Okay. Oh yeah, but the whole when you're ready for change, let me know. And you got to be ready for change and want better. And you're a beautiful 13-year-old, and I'm not gonna let you tempt me with your prostitution, and just the usual bug-eyed chomo priest stuff. And it's horrifying that he's a priest. And one of the ladies that worked at the shelter, that I was near there because I was walking down the street because I just left the youth resource center, and that's when I saw him giving out expired bread that was donated to him as a quote unquote good deed to get into heaven. And crap. Oh yeah, one of the staff there, she had to quit because one, the whole issue I always talk about, the white addict projection, how harm reduction is white on white crime, and they were just letting, like, just the stuff that they have going on there, they're letting people KMS, and it's honestly sad. And she couldn't take all the walking in on dead bodies like she had recently, well, not recently at that point in time, but at one point in time she walked in on a dead body in the bathroom, which is a common thing. Like, oftentimes 3+ people would die in one day there. It was really, really horrible and sad that they were even letting people do this to themselves. I'm not even talking about the shelter. I'm talking about just the laws that they have put in place and not wanting to police white crime, where they're even letting people give out these drugs and they're letting people kill themselves. More people died there than I ever seen people die in the hood or anything. And so anyways, her and her brother were essayed their whole life in the Christian church, and as I talked about in plenty of other videos, that's another reason, aside from the know thyself, Greco-Roman, we're the smart philosophers, we believe in ourselves stuff. Aside from that, which religion is false anyways, really, religion and actually really trying to seek truth is two different things, but that's another reason why a lot of them are atheists. Because, like, their churches, I mean, the black church is horrible too. Church in general is all horrible and false, but theirs are very weird. And I think one of the biggest things that makes their churches especially weird is the fact that they're not the people. They're trying to take credit for a book that isn't theirs, and a history that isn't theirs, and a faith that isn't theirs, that they never really believed and don't really believe. That they tried to mix with paganism, which is the whole point of Christianity. Because Jesus is Zeus and all that stuff. Mary is not the queen of heaven. Lilith, which is Satan's wife, is the queen of heaven, which is feminine goddess worship. It's like, it's just so much stuff, like, and then their churches are just so dead. And I already talked about how I've never seen them preach a real sermon, or a sermon at all. Like, it makes sense why they don't believe, because there is no substance. There's nothing to believe at all. There's nothing to even to pretend to believe in their churches. And it's just, like, really interesting. And so a Kundalini cult, more recent, accused me of being sent to assassinate their pastor. I don't even know if I want to go back over that situation because it's such a long story, to be honest. Really, they just didn't want me around because they, like I kind of talked about in the last video, this the same church, the whole thing with how I was busking my books the other last weekend actually, and this pastor actually ended up giving me $20, and he told me, or he took a flyer for my book. Now whether he'll really read it, I don't know, but he was nice and all that. I mean, I already knew he was a nice guy. The people in his church just don't really give a crap about anything that he's trying to teach them or tell them. That's the issue. And the typical pro child abuse people, but aside from that, they didn't want him to meet me because they knew that he would actually help me. And that was the biggest thing with that. And of course, like, while I'm selling my books, I'm trying to, like, not let people know my situation. And people here, aren't likely to assume that I'm homeless because in their eyes I'm too young, which goes into the whole not in my American bullcrap that people believe, and people pretend that youth homelessness doesn't exist. But that's a good thing though, because nobody wants to buy anything or even pretend to buy that they're gonna buy a book from the homeless, uneducated black kids. They're gonna see me. To make a long story short, if you're gonna try to sell anything, you don't want people to know that you're in this type of situation if you are, because that's gonna screw everything up. It's either gonna make them want to completely avoid you and not want to buy anything from you or even talk to you about what you're selling, or it's gonna make them go from possibly buying something from you, which they're online anyways, the books, but it's gonna make them go from possibly buying something to just being like, okay, wait a minute, why are you even out here? You don't look like you should be out here. And then they start trying to get all in your business and trying to like get paranoid and accuse you of stuff and get concerned, and that screws everything up. You don't want any of that. Which I kind of have a video about that titled I think I mentioned this in that video. It's titled "You're a Beggar If," or "You're a Beggar," or "You're Not a Beggar If." I don't even know. It's something like that. Oh crap, I just dropped my drawings. And it actually kind of reminds me, I mentioned this in my Miss S&J video, which is actually titled The Cycles of Life, which is the part 1, and then the part 2 is Let Me Help You Lunatic Something. And the alt title is The Real Woman of God, because that's what she called herself. And she also, well, let me not go into that because I'll be way somewhere else. But anywho, I remember when this lady was like, the church isn't doing what they're supposed to do because they know that that elderly lady that she was abusing, she was like, they know that she's crippled and handicapped and sleeping behind the church because they have cameras and they're not doing what they're supposed to do. And then she was like, and then they saw you go in there and they could have at least gave you a little job and paid you to clean up because they see that you're a child, but they don't even care. And it's unfortunate. I mean, wait a minute. As I've always said in these situations, the unfortunate thing about it is that the people that do quote unquote care are predatory, manipulative, abusive, culty people like the Miss S lady. I'm not gonna go back into that. Which I didn't fall for that anyways. It was Miss J that she ended up taking into her house and abusing, but still. So, 11. Let Me Help You Lunatics. Most of them are some form of a Bible believer, at least spiritual. Which I have a whole playlist about Let Me Help You Lunatics. And I feel like the Kundalini cult people could kind of fall into that. The White Savior Complex videos, or the videos where I talk about that, don't remember what those are titled, or I don't even know if those are on this channel, or if they're on my Abuse Evidence channels, where I really talked about some of the main white saviors. But either way, the Let Me Help You Lunatic video with the Miss S&J situation, those two are good examples of this. And the videos in my unlisted Let Me Help You Lunatic video playlist are good examples of this, because I go over like some other Christian ones that I met back when I was in Cali that kind of almost got me in trouble with the whole laying low thing. And then the Voodoo Cult Lady re-upload, the part 1, is a great example of how this goes. 12. Gospel music is about suicide and heaven and misuse the grace, even though that's not the promise. Because the real promise is technically for the kingdom to come down on earth as it is in heaven, but like in Christianity, they're always talking about dying and how much, like the ones that have really been through a lot of stuff, like I noticed they talk about how much they hate this world and all the abuse in the essay, and it's like, it's no different from the atheists with the martyr complexes that believe that self-defense is bad and if it's violent, and if you want to do this and do that and you can't help people because the law says this and that. Everybody wants to be a victim or a perpetrator. Nobody wants to be a hero because nobody's trained to be a hero. And it's like, just like this lady was saying, which this isn't what I was trying to say at all, because I don't believe in this either, and I get what she meant, and I had to let her know that that's not what I meant. But I was saying something to her, and she was like, but I don't want to have to wait till heaven to have a good life. And I was like, yeah, I get that. That's not what I meant. But a lot of religious people, they don't, it's like pretty much this idea that you suffer your whole life, and then people are pretending that they're even going to heaven to finally be able to live a decent, safe life, and then they're not going anyways, a lot of them. And it's like, shoot. And that's the scary thing about it, though. It's like, especially when it comes to like all these serial rapists and chummos running around talking about I'm a man of God and I'm a woman of God, and it's like, and these people really believe that they're going to heaven. I think I think they do. They're good at pretending that they believe it, and it's like that's actually scary though. Like people are so destined. I mean, that's not meant to say. People are so determined that they're going to heaven while believing in these false. It's all really scary, and it's like, does anybody really know Jack? Like, and then people call people the bad guy for like pointing out the fact that it seems like nobody really knows the truth. I wouldn't say that, but I would definitely say that like people that think they do really don't. Like the people that are in these like mainstream organizations, they I don't know what they think would in the world. But that's why religion is a broad path to hell, which just shows nobody listened to the quote unquote Jesus guy that everybody's always running around talking about. Nobody listened or cared about Jack, he said, or they wouldn't even be in the religious organizations that they are. Anywho, that's not the. Oh yeah, but the promise though, the promise is for the kingdom to come down on earth as it is in heaven, and for there to be a new Jerusalem and a new heaven and pretty much a new universe. Is pretty much the promise. But all Christians ever talk about is suicide, pretty much, and singing about killing themselves, pretty much, and dying. And I mean, realistically though, "Take Me to the King" wasn't even a real gospel song. It was from like I almost said Stephen King. I mean, shoot, it's just they're about the same person. They're both scary, but it's from a Tyler Perry play, if I'm remembering right. In fact, a lot of the most famous gospel songs are from his little family trauma, Black people no accountability little plays. Wait a minute, where am I? Oh yeah, but that also reminds me though about how people talk about how Christianity is a death cult, but then Christians will be like, no, it's not. But realistically, like especially with the situations that I have been and am in, like even since running away, like I mean, yeah, this is better than my previous situation, but it's like too many people get caught up in the idea that like this is it and this is all they can get, is now going from being the person that was locked up in a house or locked up in a prison somewhere being beat on and essayed to now people calling them a bum or whatever in the world, and people being mean to them now, and then being abused by random people because they're quote unquote homeless now. But like that's not a life to live though. Always being the lesser, always being the bottom, always being the doormat, the rug, the getting your face stomped on by people with Timberlands, and always being the person that's being victimized and hurt and all that stuff. Like, especially when you really see all that for what it is and you want better for yourself, it's hard to just hear this bull crap that you gotta suffer and then you go to heaven, maybe, possibly, somehow, hopefully, and then you're finally gonna get to be safe and be happy. And it's like, that's not even supposed to be the promise. Like I said in the other video, so many Christian people push this narrative, especially because really, just like anybody else, they don't want to help people like they're supposed to. So they'll just try to do this whole, well, things will get better once you're in heaven bull crap. Okay, but so the misuse grace thing goes into how though? Because number 13, quote unquote, Jesus said that I came for people, for them to have life and have it more abundantly. Not I came for them to keep suffering and then hope they go to heaven. Once saved, always saved, which equals YOLO. Do what thou wilt. You only live. Oh, that is YOLO. It's some other saying that people say that I can't remember that also goes into this, but pretty much, I've already talked about this a lot throughout the years, even before I started spiritually falling apart, which goes into the whole thing that Christians worship Satan, and going back to Albert Pike's quote, that those who are disillusioned with Christianity will eventually be brought into the pure doctrine of Lucifer, which is a reality because Christianity leads to Luciferianism. And this is why a lot of people who consider themselves atheists or just don't care for any of that stuff anymore on either side, but I guess they still know that it's real, or at least it's supernatural anyways. They'll literally say that if it wasn't for Christianity, there wouldn't even be Satanism. And to a certain extent, that's not necessarily true, because like even before the term Christianity, which is actually an insult that means poor Christ that was made by the Greeks and Romans, back during like the when Paul and all those people were evangelizing and all that, and the apostles and all that. But anywho, even before that term and before the Christ, people worship Satan, but at least for the translations we have, the Hebrews would refer to those people as like the heathens or the pagans, or really what the school system tells you, or polytheistic. People worshiping Satan and the different hybrid demon creatures that are under him, but I would assume that they probably didn't have the term Satanism though. I mean, maybe there are people that were actually purposely, knowingly worshiping Lucifer. Like, I mean, definitely by a certain point in time. I think about like Babylonians and stuff, but generally, I mean, yeah, with the modern day satanic church and the satanic Bible, yeah, probably that mainly did branch off of Christianity, especially Catholicism with the Knights Templar Freemason branches. I mean, I even think back to Aleister Crowley, who I mention all the time. Now, by those standards, back then he was a man. These days, some people would probably consider him a quote-unquote child, but the idea of what a child is and isn't is very biased. But by some people's today's standards, he was a quote-unquote child, and due to all the horrors that he went through, obviously, in the Catholic Church, he became one of the most worldwide and renowned satanic leaders and occultic leaders there are, aside from Antoine LaVey. And Aleister Crowley founded Thelema, which is well known for its sex magic, and his famous books of poetry like The Moonchild, which is a prophecy about Elon Musk, Elion the Moonchild. And he even has a law on the perversion of love, or what we now call love today. And in his laws, he wrote, "Love is a law, and love is the only law." But of course, it's a perversion of the idea of love. And it even goes back to what I always say: love isn't really real for real. Nobody really loves anybody. But I'm not even going to go into that. He was mostly talking about sexual stuff, though. But still. So yeah. Anywho, once saved, always saved. Your good deeds outweigh your bad. All actually means do what thou wouldest, the whole of the law. The satanic principle. No real repentance, just using grace, or grace wasters, or whatever in the world. Which goes back into those rants that I talked about in my pre-part 1 and my part 0, where I talk about how these chomo people that call themselves preaching or whatever will go on these rants about grace and forgiveness and how they're so glad about God's grace, and how when they get quote unquote caught, and it's like, what are you even talking about right now? What are you getting caught? What are you doing to people? Like, that's what I always wonder when these bug-eyed chomos go on these stupid little rants. 14. Scared to KMS because of age of... oh, yeah. So, I really knew I should have KMS before 10. That would have stopped so much bullcrap from happening. But I was always scared because I didn't know what the age of accountability was, and I didn't want to go to hell. But honestly, I wish I would have. And one of the things about it is that the age of accountability, it was something that was supposedly made in Catholicism or something, or maybe even in... I don't know, but nobody really talks about that. A lot of people don't really believe in it, and nobody really knows what that age is. A lot of people say 8, but there was some video that went viral some years ago about people in hell, and it was saying that there was some 9-year-old boy, or 8 or 9-year-old boy, who was in hell getting eaten by worms and abused and burning and screaming, and they said it was because he was molesting his little sister, and God kept coming to him and telling him to stop, and that it was wrong. But I always wondered about that situation, because ever since always, I was always one of those people, even going back to kindergarten and stuff, I could tell when other people are being abused and essayed. I always could sense that there's a lot of people like that. And it's like, I know the stuff like that is a trauma symptom. And it's like, I always wonder, I mean, was this boy being abused himself? But then it's also like, I mean, is this a true story? Or is somebody just making this up? Like, does this actually happen? Did they actually die and go to hell? Or was this a dream? It's just like, there's so many questions that I always had, especially revolving around that. Then some people will be like, well, I mean, did you really see a 9-year-old in hell? And then people will be like, oh my gosh, this is so... It's like, I don't know, it's all so messy. It's kind of like, what in the world? Especially with that type of story, because that sounds like a molested kid acting out their trauma anyway. So it just sounded so bull crappy for so many reasons. Oh yeah, I've even had people in recent times tell me, if you kill yourself, you go to hell. And it's like, I mean, according to the Apocrypha, 1 in 7,000 people are going to hell. So you're going to be right there beside me then, I guess. Shoot. So I can't really see. I have to keep turning on my flashlight, but it's not really helping. Would've, now, a couple people I know say, I'll go to hell, or don't speak like that about God's creation, and be positive. Wait, about all God. I can't really see this, to be honest. 15. Oh yeah, but another thing I could throw in with that, people will do everything but actually help you. But I'm not even going to say anything else with that. 15. People won't admit they're not okay, or that they're not doing well, that they're doing bad, or that they're struggling or upset, or I don't even like the term depressed. That's used to like make people feel like they shouldn't feel upset about starving or being abused or whatever in the world they have going on. I hate this like label bullcrap, but people who are just not doing okay are made to feel bad to even admit it, so they won't admit it, and they're scared to admit it because they feel like they're pretty much blaspheming and being ungrateful. For example, crap, stuff is blowing away. Quote unquote, God just gives you a roof over your head, a shirt on your back, and water. All you need, and that's it. This is something I literally heard a lady saying last year. And mind you, this is somebody that's been through absolute horrors and typical foster care bullcrap, which made her become homeless, full-blown homeless, by before 16. I don't remember what age, like on her own since 12, which is the typical thing. That's what foster care is. And full-blown homeless since 16. And like, one of the things, as I said, and I've been saying for over a year now, is that one, people's idea of being grateful is also being complacent, being codependent, having cognitive dissonance, having Stockholm syndrome, okaying abusers and saying that they did the best they could, but yet the kid or the abuse victim has never did the best they could. They're the bad guy, but the abuser did the best they could. It keeps you from really being honest with you about your situation, which keeps you from ever doing anything to actually fix it. Or even, I mean, if you want to admit that what's happening isn't good, then you're never going to be able to even try to fix it. And so, yeah, a lady was literally saying that, and I wrote, that's not how that's supposed to work. That's not how that's supposed to be. They talk about God, quote unquote, God like an abusive parent. I also hear this every day. Like somebody will ask someone, how are you doing? And they'll be like, quote unquote, good. I woke up this morning. It doesn't get better than that. Or they'll be like, I woke up this morning, and that's the chance to try again and do better and to try to live for God. And it's like, of course I'm back in this house, so you're gonna hear stuff like that. But it's like, it's not blasphemy to admit that things aren't going good and that you need help. Like, gosh, it's crazy. It's all annoying, to be honest. 16. Now understanding why people hate hearing. Okay, wait, I gotta find the next page. The world is ending. / the book, hearing about the book of Revelations, or even Matthew 24, or even I think that was Daniel that actually explained the beast of Revelation, but for whatever reason, I guess because Christians don't read the Old Testament, they don't know about that. So they just try to overcomplicate things and make it sound all mysterious and spooky, and you never know and you never could know. Which is weird, because another point of like reading the Bible is you're supposed to like ask the Holy Spirit to help you understand it and to like reveal it to you, or you're supposed to really already have eyes to hear and ears to see, because you already have a heart to accept the word for what it is. But most don't anyways, because they're believing in the white Jesus replacement theory and all that other weird stuff. So it's not gonna make sense to them anyways. But it's just weird that like they act like they say that they believe it, but how do you believe it if you don't know it and you don't have the eyes to see and the ears to hear and the heart to understand or the mind to understand? Which still makes me think back to a video I saw where it said that most Christians are illiterate, so they can't read the Bible anyway. So, and it's like, if that's true, then they definitely don't have the mind to understand. So I don't know how true that is though. But anywho, to get back to the point, something. What is it? Wait, I can't even see this. Some months back, I started to get this. It's just like how Gen Z feels they have no future due to the AI and stuff, which a lot of this stuff is really about fearmongering, pushing the media. I mean, yeah, things are going to change as a part of the B system, and they're not being lied to, but people are being made to feel like hopeless really soon before they really have to, I feel. But anywho, which is actually Agenda 2030 and B system with universal basic income / the "you own nothing to be happy" quote from the NWO, communism being rolled out with the World Economic Forum, which is where that quote comes from. I think it's Klaus Schwab, who owns a lot of these international banks that are literally named after him. And you're made to feel like people will love the B system. Oh no, I forgot to say, I didn't even go into the real point because I didn't write that down because I expected myself to remember. So, I understand this now. When I was a lot younger, I didn't really understand it, but I think that, like, especially after running away, after getting out of my abuse situation, I really started to have the ability to really be able to think because I wasn't in constant torture and chaos. I was like, actually, this stuff is really about to start happening, like, sooner and sooner. Like, it's no longer like it was when I was like 7 and watching videos about it and reading Revelations, which, I mean, that's still even kind of like pretty recent. I mean, pretty close too, because like the end time is supposed to be like a long period technically. But it's like, now I'm getting older and we're getting closer, and it's not just like some far off distant future fairy tale type thing anymore where I can like read it about and be like, oh, this sounds so cool or something. It's not like that. Like, this is real stuff. And then another thing with that is like, I've already been so sabotaged. I'm already like in the typical stuff with like the aftermath of an abuse situation, or even for the people that I know that are still in their abuse situations or whatever, and people that aren't going to make it out the cash for kids system and their human cash cow systems that are already wondering, will I ever have a life? Will I ever have like a future by metric standards? Will I ever be able to like have a job or like own a company or go to school, get a degree, have a family, be loved, be adopted, which is a fairy tale in and of itself. People who are thinking things like that, pretty much, like, people who already, this isn't coming out how I wanted to at all. People don't like to hear about this because it gets them out of their comfort zone. It bursts their bubble. They want to believe that things are always going to be okay. Things are always going to be the same, like how people want things to go back to how they were before 2020, before the plan dim. People don't want to hear that they're not going to be able to have a future, and especially for like young people and like kids and stuff. Hearing about this is, as people see the signs and it gets closer and closer, it gets even worse, especially if you're already somebody who already is in a circumstance where you're already like a statistic and you're bound to go further into being a statistic and then never making it in life and never having anything and then probably dying before, I don't know, 25 or 13 or something. And like, you already don't even know if you're going to be alive tomorrow or you're going to wake up or whatever in the world. You already don't know if you're ever going to get to like be that doctor that you want to be. So like, I understand why people don't like hearing about the end of the world now. I really get it now, like, because like, especially since running away, and especially in very recently, like literally the last 3 months, no, the last 2 months, I mean, I've really started to like think more about, I mean, not that I didn't think about this before, but like, I've been in a stable enough place. Like, it's not like when I was in California and I was having people constantly chasing me around, calling the police on me for no reason and telling me to go back to Mexico and all that bull crap. which homeless laws are getting worse. So, I mean, the National Guard and ICE is about to come out here too, where I'm at now. But like, I couldn't even. It got to the point where I couldn't even go to sleep at night without being woken up by a cop with their hand on their gun. But I was also in a high homeless population area. If you're in a place that doesn't have a high homeless population, and you go to the white side, especially the richer white side, where like, because they don't police their crime, then there are no police to be telling you to get up and stuff. So that's what you got to do. But that's kind of besides the point. But anywho, I've been thinking again now that I'm finally in a stable place. I have a place to stash my stuff. I've been robbed twice, but that's whatever. Like, now I feel like, okay, I can start trying to like do things again. Like how I got interrupted back when I was in Cali because of all the racial stuff and all the other bullcrap and the homeless hate. So it's like, yeah, like there's things that I wanted to do that I've already been really sabotaged, and it's already unlikely. And it's like, I just want to be able to have a normal life and maybe accomplish some things. But it's like with the time frame, me and with the circumstances that I'm in and have been in, other people I know who got out their abuse situations or are still in it, and even I'm seeing like there's just so many like Gen Z kids and even their parents that are making videos about how they feel about what's going on, and it's like, it's interesting that they feel the same way. They feel the same hopelessness and like sabotage type feeling that me and other people I know who have like been put in these situations feel like. They feel the same way but for different reasons. It's not coming out how I want it to at all. And like, I get now why people don't like to hear about the end of the world, because like now I'm really seeing, okay, this stuff is really happening now. Like, a lot of stuff is about to go down in America in the coming months due to like the stuff that we're doing. And it's like, I'm probably not going to get to do any of the things that I wanted to do that I already felt like I wasn't going to get to do before double digits. Like I always say, I knew my life was over before 10. And even at 16, I told this lady that my life was over. And it's like, yeah, like, it's like, I get people don't like it. I don't know what to say about it. It just is what it is. Like, it's not something that you really want to hear, especially when you want to have a future. And I think, like, when I was in my abuse situation, I already felt like I was never going to get to accomplish anything, and I'd probably be murdered by my parents or the cash for care system staff anyways. It didn't really matter to me that much because I didn't see myself having a future anyways. And also, it sounded like far stretched out, like in the distant future. And I already knew that, like, I already knew the rapture doctrine was false since 8. I already knew that what else was it? It was something else. I already knew the people that were saying that the rapture was coming on September 23rd every year based off of the whatever calendar. I knew that was false by 8 as well. So I didn't like have to worry about that stuff. So like I just kind of like started to forget how close it all was, and like, yeah, there's that. When in the house is abused, and no, I'm back on the wrong page again because the wind. I don't even know how that happened actually. I guess I sat it down wrong. Okay, so then I wrote, the funny thing is, a lot of people hate what they're seeing with AI. In fact, most people do. Well, I didn't write that part, but this goes into what I wrote. I noticed that, like, back when there were more videos about this in the 2010s, whenever you would hear about the end times and the beast and the one world monitoring system and the one world monetary money system, you were made to feel like people would just be lining up for the mark, but actually people are going to be pushed into getting this. I don't even know if there's going to be like as much deception revolving around it as you're made to think, but you're made to feel like people are going to like it. But as you can see by people's reaction to AI, most people already don't like what's coming. They already don't like what's happening. So yeah, you're made to feel like people will love the beast system and they'll be like, yay, Satan and all that. But obviously that's not true. LOL, I remember I used to count up to see how old I'll be by 2030, if I even survived. But now that it's right there, I don't get why. I get why it scares people, especially those who have a chance in life and really see themselves having a possible future. 17, people faking being delivered or making others fake it to not seem blasphemous or to make their ministry look good. This is really common when it comes to same-sex attraction. Everybody's always talking about that, and that's like the scapegoat. But you don't actually see people really getting delivered. Like they still have the spiritual, they still have the DID, they still have the trauma and the soul fractures that all cause these issues. They still have the generational stuff that causes these issues, and you don't see people actually getting delivered. You see people having to fake it, and also in other things. And I think I already talked about how even Pastor Stephen Darby would mention in his videos how one of the biggest pressures in churches is being pressured to fall or even to dance. Like he mentioned one church made him do an electric slide once. But yeah, people being forced to pretend to be delivered, even if they didn't have a demon in the first place, which that's in those really false places. And I don't know what to say about that, but I think it also can go into the fact that people don't really know how to do deliverance, and people don't really know about the trauma and the soul fractures and all that stuff, and how all that stuff ties in everything. And nobody wants to talk about the possibilities of why this stuff isn't working, or how they just don't know what the heck they're doing. And then also another thing that I forgot, I mentioned this in some other video, if it doesn't work, especially with like deliverance ministries, like individual, like the ones who are really focused on that, being told that it did work, but you just didn't have like one of those crazy rolling around on the floor screaming episodes, because you don't always have to have that. It doesn't always have to be crazy. So being told that it did work and then still being the same or having the same problems and issues, being told that it didn't work because you don't believe, and it's like, well, trust me, if I didn't, before I ran away, if I didn't believe, I wouldn't have paid you for it as the abused kid who's scraping up money that's supposed to be being saved to run away. And if I really didn't believe, I wouldn't have paid you for it as a homeless kid. And then, shoot, I feel like I believe more then than I do now. Crap, I lost my, oh, here it is. Okay. I don't know what I can say with that. So, yeah. 18. Chomos and rapists and toxic DL parents and pastors talking about GYY people, even though the they're the ones turning people out. Also acting like it's something you beat out of someone instead of seeing it as the generational marine and a setter spirit, trauma related parent dynamic and trauma induced neglect and spiritual and psychological issue it is. That was in a really, really bad order, and I really can't even see, to be honest. But pretty much, this can even go back to the black church thing as well. Really seeing any issue as something to beat out of somebody, but acting like you can just beat the gay out of somebody or something like that, even though typically it's generational. So the parents and the whole family, the siblings, every grandpa, typically everybody is at least bisexual. And it's also a lot of trauma in the family system that even causes these issues, which is also why it's generational. Absent mom, absent dad, typical two toxic parents, emotional neglect from both parents. Those are the things that causes these issues, and nobody wants to address that because nobody really wants the real accountability. Which is also why being quote-unquote homo is one of the biggest scapegoats used by Christianity. That's the only thing that they talk about. But yet nobody's healing anybody. Nobody's really getting delivered. And that's another funny thing with it. How do I raise... Wait a minute. Dynamic and trauma. Okay, I already read all that. How do people expect me to raise myself, protect myself, figure out how I'm going to eat and have shelter for myself as a girl throughout my whole life, but then expect me to not be quote-unquote masculine and just quote-unquote be a woman? This can even go for guys, but I don't really know how to explain what the vice versa type thing would be for guys with that. Because, I mean, people want to do the whole you're supposed to be a tough guy thing, but then people say that in the quote-unquote black community, we have hyper-masculinity. No, we don't. We have false masculinity. We have a whole bunch of turned out traumatized guys walking around with their butt out. Vertigo-basal butt breaking, it's an SA symptom, it's a trauma symptom. Guys and girls walk around with their butt out for the same reason, it's trauma. But guys don't get talked about for it. When a girl does it, she's a hoe. When a guy does it, he's a whatever he thinks he is, a thug. I don't even know. I don't know what they think they are. But anyways. I'm trying to remember where I was at. Oh yeah, but I also wanted to throw in there something I started realizing by elementary is that, and even more especially today, kids raise and help each other. Grown-ups are really they're really indifferent. Like most people 40 plus aren't safe, as I've always noticed. And it's like grown-ups are really so indifferent to like what the youth have going on, and they really don't care. Kids, we're just always helping out and raising each other. Like, oh, this is happening, or you don't have any food at home, well, I'll help you, and that's how it always is. Like, grown-ups people really don't care about the youth. And that's why in my last video I mentioned a really good example, I feel. I'm pretty sure I mentioned how ever since I was really young, I talked about how I noticed that like parents are often so bullcrappy to where like younger siblings, at least especially in really bad neglect situations, a younger sibling or younger cousin will call the older sibling or the older cousin mom or dad. And then I also mentioned how, like, for example, with some rapper kids, DDL Sam and that other one whose name I can't remember, definitely not Sugar Hill D-Dot, it was one of them. There were some leaked messages, I guess because somebody hacked their Instagram. I don't know why people do that weird stuff, but they leaked some messages where one of the younger guy was, because they're 2 or so years apart, something like that. The younger one was like, why are you acting like I'm fake or something? Remember when you didn't have food at home and I would get you food and I would help you get food from the corner store or something like that? And it's like, where are quote unquote grown people? Where quote unquote parents at in these situations? Like, and it was some old messages too from when they were like 12 or something. But that's how it goes. And so, the other thing, if I can remember where I'm at, I think I already read all of that. Hold up, masculine and just 19. DV says your issues are demons. Doctors just medical gaslight you and say you're fine. And for some things, you're told it's just your personality when it comes to deliverance and even in the medical system. So pretty much, you get no straight answer and you're being played back and forth. Which even goes into the whole thing somewhat, kind of, because it's somewhat similar, of me saying is deliverance the new therapy. Which even reminds me, people are talking about how it seems like deliverance has become a revolving door. 20. LOL with like 4 L's. I cannot see that. All at 12, thinking the iatrogenic. Oh yeah, because of my sexual addiction. I remember before I started researching the iatrogenic side effects of all the drugs I was forced on during my Munchausen syndrome by proxy and castrate system abuse. I thought that the PSSD, which causes you to not be able to have an orgasm, I thought it was God punished me for the sexual addiction since 4 years old. I forgot about that, but I did remember that during this. I used to talk about that all the time during when I was in support groups and stuff. 21. Thinking my health issues are punishment. Oh yeah, this also goes into another thing that I could say. I mentioned something revolving around this in my part 0, I believe, but thinking that like if I 100% got over my sexual addiction, then my chronic illness will go away. That's also like the OCD type, magical thinking type thing that goes along with this stuff. And it kind of goes back to the whole thing. Who is really hearing from what? How do you know what's really true and what's not really true? And what's right and what's not? Spirit of religion sets you up for OCD, abusive savior complexes, magical thinking, hearing from whatever in your head, LOL. So pretty much different things that I call let me help you lunatics. And including white savior complexes, if I didn't already say that. Like with the missionaries that go to traffic and SA people, the quote-unquote poor brown people. And as I always say, it's always stupid. You get on a boat or a plane to go help people in other countries that are going through the same things that people in the U.S. are going through. Because, quote-unquote, not in my America, that doesn't happen here. Like, people going to other countries to help homeless kids. At least in those other countries, they don't go to jail for being a homeless kid. Here, you get locked up in a prison or mental facility and sent back to abuse or trafficking for being a homeless kid. And being homeless in general at any age is illegal. In those other countries, they can go to a youth shelter, at least. Or they can at least exist without being locked up for something that they can't control. And being told that they're just a juvenile delinquent and being bad and all that stupid stuff. If anything, if anybody needs help, the people here that are going to jail for it need help. And they're not even helping people, they're just going there to molest people anyways. Okay, 23 religious people don't believe in the supernatural, which even goes back to the different beliefs of the Sadducees and the Pharisees. But I'm not going to go into that. 24 realizing truther channels were just racist white guys who believed in replacement theory. 25 taking captive religious OCD thoughts, feeling trapped, realizing unhealthy thinking patterns. Which is kind of a joke because I was thinking about the verse, take captive every thought that exalts itself against the knowledge of the Most High God. But I put taking captive all the religious OCD. 26 understanding why hell and heaven is scary. And the funny thing is, I didn't really start worrying about the whole hell thing till recently, which is funny because I didn't start worrying about it till after getting over sexual addiction, which is why I thought that maybe it's more so like spiritual warfare, because it seems like since getting better, now that I'm really not doing anything, now I'm the most worried about hell, which is funny, actually. But like even before 14, like I remember reading the Bible and seeing that like people after everything's said and done and every tear is wiped from people's eyes and all that stuff, they will remember their pain no more. And it's like, okay, so is God going to memory wipe everybody once they get to heaven or once the new earth or the new universe is created? That sounded scary to me. So I didn't just realize how scary heaven is. That was the first thing I realized, which I guess would be considered blasphemous, because I realized that before I was really I was thinking about that in elementary, especially 5th grade. And I remember even saying something to somebody about that at 14, where I was like, it sounds like God's going to wipe our memory. But the hell thing, I didn't really think about that till recently. I mean, it all sounded really scary, but I guess I just worry about that more. Okay, so realizing, no, I already read that. Hold up. No, I already read that. 27. Alejandra, quote unquote, you come off as a crazy religious person. I'm not going to go into that. The Alejandra story is really long, to be honest. 28. I'd make friends if delivered from Marine Kingdom spirits. Nope. I already kind of talked about that, to be honest. I didn't know I wrote that down, though. Also, not that related to topic. 29. Most chosen/anointed people, KMS, lose it, are taken out, locked up, and get CPTSD, schizo, PDs, DID, etc. from trauma, even becoming Jezebels / quote unquote narcs, or overall don't meet their purpose. They're not shielded mentally and physically like Daniel, Joseph, or David, or even Moses. Plus, there's a sick system put in place these days for people with no family or abusive family who nobody gives a crap about. The cash for kids system / and human cash cow system / Ramco, to make you a statistic, or even Delta or Manchurian candidate, including Gates, SPED, prison, TTI, etc. All this talk of who's gifted, chosen, etc. But no crap. No one's accomplishing anything but getting abused and outcast and lonely and friendless. with sex addiction. Oh wait, with 5 ex-husbands. I guess I was just seeing stuff and throwing in my own thighs there. But shoot, that too. But with 5 ex-husbands their whole life, falling into gender confusion, or if they get lucky, becoming a snake oil salesman and charlatan scam artist who holds their quote-unquote narc parents who messed them up at the highest esteem and is in the fake forgiveness bullcrap, including but not limited to anointed people in Kundalini Spirit False Deliverance Ministries, tarot card New Age, carbon cults, etc. So pretty much the point of all this is like the people that go on these rants about anointed and gifted people, but it's like I don't even care about. I already didn't even like the term chosen one because I feel like it's too up there, it's too prideful, but nobody's doing anything to help anybody. Like most chosen one videos are people who are gifted and are different, but they're just like being tortured and abused, and nobody wants to come together to help each other. Nobody gives a crap about anybody. Like people want to talk about how they want to spread awareness to anointed and prophetic people. Okay, well, how about you go stand on the corner somewhere to kids who are being abused just like you are, or well, you were. Because one of the things with me is that people have always felt some type of way about me because I'm talking about stuff while actually going through it. They're finally admitting stuff while they're 45 and 50 and stuff, and now they're talking about their abuse. People feel some type of way about me or feel some type of way about me because one, me escaping my abuse. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to be getting abused. Two, you're not supposed to talk about your parents and family. All of that is quote unquote wrong. But then, hold up. But then once your parents passed away, when you're 50, now you can talk about all the abuse. You can talk about how you got through it and how you survived and pushed through and you honored them and you're anointed and prophetic and how you love them so much and they were the best thing ever and they did the best they could. And you can talk about prophetic people now. Stupid stuff. But it's like, screw all of that. I don't want to hear people talking about how anointed they are and how they know this and know that. Nobody's helping each other. That's why I could care less to really hear or listen to anything at this point. Nobody's doing anything about anything. Nobody's stepping up. Everything is just all bark, no bite. And even most of these like channels that are coming out the woodworks, especially since the files thing that's decades old info that people are now pretending to somewhat care about, all these channels that are coming out the woodworks talking about quote-unquote pedos and quote-unquote abuse, it's all bark and no bite. And most of these people are definitely like they're controlled oppositions. They're just people that popped up out of nowhere that all of a sudden have a platform, but nobody wants to help actual abused people that are crying out for help because they know that there's laws put in place to keep you from doing that, but also because they're cons and COINTELPRO, it seems. That's all that is. Nobody, oh no, but to get back to the point before I go away somewhere else, most people that are these gifted people, they're literally just killed, to make a long story short. They're killed by these systems and by society. They're destroyed, they're abused their whole life. They never escape their abusive family system. If they do, guess what? There's a trick that society has up its sleeve for that. If you do run away or get kicked out or whatever, now you're the bummer, now you're in prison, whatever in the world. That's why it's really just, that's another reason why it's annoying hearing people going on these rants about the prophetic whatever in the world, because it's like, okay, but, and then like some people talk about how most prophetic people lose their mind, but it's like, they don't really lose, I mean some of them do, but it's due to the trauma and abuse, the fact that there is no help, and then a lot of them are in abusive Munchausen syndrome by proxy situations and a set of abuse situations that they never get out of, where they get put in conservatorships and guardianships, or they just get locked up for the rest of their life for no reason, for trying to defend themselves from a molester or a rapist or whatever, and they get locked up. It's not even because they're quote-unquote out of their mind. Like, I remember there's this other deliverance ministry dude that says, if Christians were doing what they were supposed to do and we were casting out demons, most people who are in mental facilities wouldn't even be in there. That's not even true, because most of those people don't even have issues. And like even the nurse techs and stuff say, the drugs make them crazy, if anything. But also, it's Munchausen syndrome by proxy in and of itself. They're supposed to create an issue that isn't already there. So generally, that's just not true. They do eventually get driven insane, but it's like, especially like in the early parts of your abuse situation, unless you're like in a really, really bad sexual abuse situation, or you're in it from like infancy, typically it takes a long time for you to really, really be driven full blown insane if you ever even get to that point, which typically most people really don't. Like most people are in cognitive dissonance and stuff, and like everybody has some level of DID or MPDs, but most people don't really go full blown insane. It's like it's a level to have in splits, and even then it's still kind of iffy. It's all a spectrum, and even if you do, it takes a while for your abuse to really like do that to you, and that's kind of the point of why the systems do their all to keep you stuck in your abuse and tell you you're not allowed to leave and all that, and put laws in place to keep you in there, to try to make sure you do end up with a whole bunch of issues, especially physical health issues, which that's not even talked about, to try to make sure you end up with cancer and autoimmune issues and all that stuff. That's really the goal, but the idea that people are in there because they're insane honestly isn't even really true. And then that was the other thing. 31. No, where was I? Hold up. Okay, the security guard for the car wash place that's been shut down for a year or something anyways came by. But I'm trying to remember where I was even at. 30? Or did I already, wait a minute. 30. If everyone is hearing from quote unquote God, yet everyone is hearing something different, we're all schizos going to hell. 31. Christian YouTubers with platforms. Wait, what does this say? Both quote unquote black and quote unquote white are Freemason plants pushing political agendas, whether left socialist gospel or right American Christian nationalism. 32. Alphabet is European agenda, yet white conservative guys swear to hate it, yet. Ah, crap, wait a minute. Okay, so I had to stop recording. My foot's falling asleep. If I'm in the wrong position for just 2 seconds. Where am I? And I cannot really see this. Rather, I already read that. Okay, white conservative guys swear to hate it, yet I noticed a lot of southern male sex preds love trans kids and even adults, which are typically easy to take advantage of, as exposed with the Chomo Trevor Project, because they're already traumatized, confused, and bullied, and they already have all types of sexual issues going on. They want validation, and they have low self-esteem typically, and they're gender confused. And also, for these guys, it gives them the idea that they're still quote-unquote straight with that straight bullcrap, because they're like, well, technically I'm with a man, or technically I'm with a woman. Some bugs started crawling towards me, and it was something else with that. But yeah, it's like being with a kid. It gives them the feeling of getting to be with a kid, a man, and a woman all at the same time. That's why they like it so much. They like that stuff a lot. That's also part of why there's the NAMBLA that Zuckerberg is a part of, has always been a part of. That goes back to ancient Europe, which is a man-boy love association, but I can't say the full name, I don't think. There used to be a lot of info out about stuff like that back in the 2010s, but the internet, especially YouTube, started to get purged as censorship got worse. 32, no, I already read that. 33, none of these religious people I looked up to will like me for many reasons. 1, I'm young and against abuse and I'm a runaway. 34, CPTSD comments endured to be rewarded. So there was this post that I seen in some, I think it was a CPTSD group, but it might have been a religious group, where this one lady was like, she used to believe that if she just kept enduring until the end, she'd be rewarded. And hold up, what is that light over there? Looks like somebody's lighting a lighter, but I can't even see. I'm gonna have to walk over there once I'm done. Okay, so what was it? Oh yeah, I think I already kind of said it. She just believed that like if she endured to the end, then she'd be rewarded, and that's definitely a big thing that can like really screw up the heads of some the people who are like in abuse situations or always seem to be at the bottom. That's a really big thing that's not good, which even goes into the whole thing of how people say that I think it's the fruit of the Holy Spirit. One of them is being long suffering, and that's another thing that people use to make you believe that you have to endure abuse. In fact, before I ran away, when I was in the Jim Crow self-confined placement, the staff had religious trauma, and especially the one that I would call Miss B. I still have plenty of videos about this on the Abuse Evidence channels. I have like 4 playlists about the Jim Crow self-confined placement or more. But most of the videos are about Miss B as well. Anywho, there was this one time where she was going on this going on a story rant about how her mom did what she was supposed to do and she stuck through that marriage like a real Christian woman, and how the church was across the street and they would have to run across the street to church because the dad would be shooting at them with a gun because he didn't want them to go to church, and how her mom quote unquote did what she was supposed to do and didn't get a divorce. And it's like, yeah, that's the issue with this long suffering martyr complex bullcrap. And then, of course, now they have a job in the Jim Crow self-confined placement where they can abuse a bunch of kids and whoever that nobody gives a crap about. And one of the things about the quote-unquote, the normal Gen Ed kids is that, I mean, yeah, they would go to, like, that room to take tests sometimes, but they didn't have to put up with their bull crap. They have parents that give a crap about them. They're the normal people, not the bad whatever in the world kids or whatever. So they didn't have to deal with that stuff, and they could report it if they really wanted to. They could get up and leave. They would even talk about how the staff would gaslight them, but how they didn't have to put up with it. They didn't have to be like, well, crap, now I'm going on the flashback rant. Anyhow, yeah, long suffering. So, I guess that's all I have to say about that. If everyone is here from God, did I already read that? I think that was it for this page. 34, 35. They hate us for Christ's name's sake. No, they don't. Was his name even Christ? But yeah, so the whole "they're gonna hate you for my name's sake" verse. Christians like to throw this up, but realistically, the point of Christianity was to make the world hate the Most High. And then also, no, people really don't. They hate you because you're just as messed up as everybody else, and often worse, to be honest. And yeah, that's all I can really say about that. But they like to use that to have no accountability. For the ones that even know the Bible enough to even quote that verse. Okay, so 36. You left one cult and joined another. So, this is a comment that I seen in the comment section of this lady who made a video about how she was depressed, wanted to unalive herself, was trans, dating a chomo, had a lot of ongoing active trauma, and she went from the alphabet and all that other stuff to being a Christian. And this one guy commented, "You left one cult and joined another." He's honestly not wrong. Okay, so as much as like there's been this left right mind herd and divide and conquer agenda with the southern people talking about, oh, Californians and Californians this, they're all trans and stuff like that. One, really the issue with that is that that's also a mostly white area, and this is really a white thing, and it started off as a very white thing. They accepted this agenda first before anything else. Like I remember when I was 10, I had made this comment on YouTube about how the white kids accepted the alphabet agenda first and they were openly accepting it quicker. And this white lady was like, honestly, you're right, I really see it. And then, of course, we followed suit. But it's also really interesting that they go on these rants aside from the fact that the chomo and even the alphabet stuff was a European practice. Um, the video timed out, but aside from that, it's also really weird that the Southern conservatives or just Southern people in general are always talking about the West Coast mentality. Because I noticed that Southern places have something was crawling on my arm. They have like a really strong principality, perversion, and marine spirits as well. Like literally where I'm at now, it's hard to really even exist without constantly having to deal with sex predators popping up out the woodworks. Although I can say that when I was in other places like in Portland, one of the things about it is that due to racial and classism and stuff, people also don't want to get caught talking to the broke person or the homeless person or the brown person. So that is another reason why in some places, especially when I was in Portland, I never had like people approaching me asking, trying to like essay me or whatever. Like people constantly do here of like any ethnicity. But then there's also still the fact that like even when I was in Portland, like the other homeless people didn't even like try to do anything to me. Like the older ones, they didn't even do anything, or that like I never even had anyone like approach me on some crazy mess. In California, yeah, some of them, but still like where I'm at now, since being in the South, it's like there's just so much chomo and just perversion and issues in general. It's a really strong Marine Kingdom principality over a lot of the South, and that's another thing that makes it crazy that the conservatives in Florida, Atlanta, Texas, LA, etc., they're always talking about them. And plus, these issues that are now, I mean, these places were also very well known for boy prostitution since at least the 60s. And there's so many old documentaries out about that stuff. Like even in one of the ATL ones, they didn't even see it as like a boy being essayed. They just said a man having sex with another man. That's a boy being essayed and having to do it for money to be able to eat. But anywho, because that was a literal quote in one of the documentaries. If I can find it, I'll put it in the description. But it's in one of my playlists about trafficking or whatever. I don't know where at or how far down, but yeah. Then also the "it's okay to turn people out, but not for them to be turned out" rhetoric, or the hidden rhetoric. Nobody will ever say it out loud, but this is what people really think. Okay, what else was it? It was something else with that. Oh yeah, but like Texas, like Dallas, Houston, Atlanta. Also, I could throw in LA. I mean, when I was writing this, I'm pretty sure I'm in Louisiana, but I mean, I think Los Angeles, obviously that's like California, but those places were very well known at around the same times for boy prostitution and all the trafficking stuff with street kids and really anybody. And I'm almost done actually. Wait a minute, 38. The idea that getting a husband at 8 to 11 would fix my sex addiction. I don't think I pronounced that right, but I forgot about this up until recently when I was writing this, I guess. But yeah, I guess that could be a form of religious OCD, but I think I was just trying to make myself feel better about all the emotional neglect anyways, generally. But then also back when I had sexual addiction really bad at that point in time, it's like, I don't know, it's weird because like, especially with like all the harassment day to day, I've definitely went deeper into like sex aversion, but it still seems like the people that I like never liked me, I've been in too many isolating situations, especially, till this day, really, where I'm not around people my age. So, like, it wouldn't even be safe for me to, like, try to get with the people that I am around, obviously, especially now. And then it's like, whenever I would get the chance to get with somebody due to, like, the attachment issues and the commitment stuff, I would be like, nah. And I never did want to be the person with the soul ties who, like, loses their virginity and then they're thinking about Tyrone for the rest of their life, that they had sex with that 9 or whatever. Like, none of that stuff leads anywhere good. And I knew that. And I knew that's just like you gotta learn from other people's mistakes. It doesn't lead anywhere good. So I managed to avoid all the sleeping around that I could have been doing. Somehow while still having sex addiction and just like being really hypersexual. But also I think that one of the good things about it was that people, especially when I was really young, do like being so hypersexual. People were like, they felt scared. So like other people my age wouldn't want to get with me and they didn't want to do all those things that I wanted to do. But that's also, that's another thing that can set you up to get SA'd, because like you're 6 or whatever and you want people to have sex with you, but nobody your age will do it. So then that can set you up to possibly end up asking like some chomo. And I know that people feel like that's victim blaming. Obviously the older person always has like the control, but it's also a good thing that didn't end up happening either. And even still doesn't, because like generally I just don't really care for like all the fake love stuff. 39. Not wanting to get to. I don't know what I was supposed to be writing there. I guess I forgot and went to the next thing. 40. You can kill GAY people but not chomos or rapists. And one thing I will say though is that people say that the Bible tells you to like unalive GAY people, but that something that Christians, Gentiles, atheists, Europeans that have hijacked all this stuff need to understand is that this was the actual culture of people in their own anarchist society. Their job was to purge out all the sin before it spread throughout the society, and everybody that was like not washing their hands and stuff, before they started spreading diseases and everybody got sick and demon possessed. That was their goal in their anarchist society. That wasn't like a broad statement for real, but because they don't get the Bible and they just see it's like a little religious do good things thing. They make it about what they want. But anywho, so they'll often like talk about how the Bible tells you to unalive GAY people, but that's not really how that goes. But this is also my quote. It's interesting how people are always talking about taking out GAY people, but it's bad to defend yourself from a chomo. It's bad to defend yourself from an abuser. It's bad to take out serial rapists and all that, which is all very ironic, but that's done by design. 41. The halfway told abortion story. Ignoring the eugenics side and ignoring the racial and classist side, and the point was to take out true Yashrael and poor people, but especially melanated people and true Yashrael, which are melanated people. That's why the Margaret lady, whose name I can't really say on here, made the PP clinics. It was all a racial agenda. People's fear for their kids, which I have a whole video about what I'm really trying to say with this title. It's really a re-upload because I made it a couple years ago, but it's titled when people love their kids to death, literally. And it's about how, especially after going to California, I finally understood the deeper side to why people want to have ABO, what's at the PP clinics. It's still selfish, but like people who are so scared to bring a kid into the world to possibly be abused, to be poor, to suffer, it's still eugenics. It's still genocide. But I do get what people mean when they say people aren't pro-life, they're pro-birth. There's more than just the young girl that's not even really old enough to even be having kids, screaming in front of some mic saying, "My body, my choice." It's more than that. It's real reasons behind this. People are scared. People don't want somebody to come here and be tortured, abused, and suffer their whole life. even when I was in California, I had a lady say, "Wouldn't you have rather been the A word than have been born to be abused and to have to run away and be homeless?" And then I said no, but honestly, I don't know. Probably, to be honest, at this point, but that still doesn't mean that I make the selfish decision to try to take somebody else's life away because I don't want to be here. That's still selfish and nuts. But definitely people should plan for kids. Okay, so anywho, you're not really ignoring people's. Okay, I already read all that. 42, quote unquote, you're not really saved if you have MPDs from your abuse. Now, there's so much I could say about this. People want you to actively be going through stuff and then to not have the symptoms of it. And if you do, you're not saved, and you're supposed to have kind of like the whole thing with Paul when he was in prison. I think myself happy. I quote this all the time, but it's like, that stuff isn't realistic. Like, even going back to what I was saying that I actually forgot to really speak on, with how anointed people aren't protected like Paul and all those people were back then. I mean, well, not even Paul. I meant to really say Daniel and Joseph and Moses. They're not protected like they were back then, it seems. Like, for one, there's too many systems put in place that'll snatch up somebody. Like, was it Joseph or Daniel that was literally trafficked by his own brothers? He was trafficked by his own brothers. Like, if that would have happened today, he would be in some TTI on a ranch somewhere, shoveling horse crap, being forced to eat his own throat, being essayed in a ranch in the middle of nowhere in Utah. Like, there's too many systems put in place for that, which also goes back to why things were different back then, especially in the earlier days before Hebrews' persecution got bad. There weren't elites running everything yet. The bloodline families hadn't started taking over everything. Things were different, and there was just things that you could do that you can't do. So yeah, you're I'm trying to think about what else I could say with the whole you're not saved if you have MPDs. I could generally say the whole you're not really saved in general if you have this and that going on. And it's like, I mean, it's just really crazy. The idea that, like, I'm supposed to not be in the reality of my situation. 43, quote unquote, that's demonic or scary due to ignorance and not understanding life. So, for example, the idea that multiple personalities are in and of itself demonic. I mean, yeah, everybody doesn't have Legion. That's like 12,000 spirits or something like that. But I do know that, or at least supposedly according to some deliverance ministers, MPDs are generally a natural response to trauma that is actually a protective mechanism created by the creator to protect you in trauma, but spirits can attach to the wounded emotions. And if you go through high level MK Ultra, not just the typical abuse that'll give you MPDs and stuff, then you have program multiples that can purposely have like demons attached to them and different stuff like that. But generally, like, people will see, I mean, in the American music industry, yeah, everything is like, it has an agenda behind it, and those are people, not even cells, but people born in the bloodline to push agendas. But for example, somebody makes a song about how they're depressed, and somebody will be like, oh, that's demonic. I mean, yeah, your spirit is attached to whatever music you make, and that can attach to other people generally. But that doesn't mean that they necessarily had a demonic, satanic intent to it. Generally, life is life. People, they get sad. The people get suicidal. It's a part of, like, things just happen. But it doesn't have to be necessarily demonic. Okay, like, even with having MPs, people will be like, oh, that's demonic. Everybody has MPs. Everybody has a level of DID. That's literally life. You go through trauma. You get abused. You get beat on. You get whatever in the world happens. You get essayed. Whatever, and then you get MPDs, at least to a certain level. It doesn't have to be like extremely like discreet or anything. It doesn't have to be extremely extreme. Apparently couldn't hear me. I don't think they saw me until I actually walked over. I was kind of worried though, because I thought that like it was someone that could actually hear me going on a like 3-hour long rant about abuse. They can see me. So I guess it's whatever. But that actually reminds me of another video. I don't think they can see me. Hold up. About the things that I'm glad I did before running away that kind of like helped me to finally have a little bit of a life for the last time I would. Before I was pretty much guaranteed to be in a situation, I'm even more likely to not really get to be around younger people, and to pretty much continuously be reminded that my life is over. And I'm just going to be isolated, living in a box until I kill myself. And then I'm going to not get to hang around anybody but like 90-year-olds. But I don't remember what I was last saying. But now I feel depressed again. You're not really saved if you have... Okay, I definitely already read that. I think I kind of already went over the whole quote-unquote that's demonic or scary thing. I understand life. 44. Warfare from... not really knowing if if everything was warfare from not having the sex addiction anymore, or punishment from... No, wait. I'm confused actually about what I meant to write here. Punishment from having it. I think maybe what I meant is not knowing if like some things are the aftermath or supposed possible punishment from having sexual addiction since 4, or if it's the aftermath of getting over most of it and now I'm going through spiritual warfare because of that. But I'm not even sure if I meant past or present tense. But I guess I'd have to mean present tense because only since running away have I like been able to get over that stuff. But I'm still kind of confused. Like, I remember there was this one time where I was under the impression that if I didn't watch porn or do anything for 30 days, I would be completely delivered. I was going to have some radical, like, coughing up a demon or something, and I was going to, like, my health issues were going to get better. That was, like, back in the earlier days of me being out here, though. And once those 30 days hit and I got higher than that, and it just kept going and nothing happened, it was like, okay. Alright. It's warfare. No, I read that. MPDs. 45 MPDs are evil. You promo MK Ultra and everyone has DID. Oh yeah, it's weird also that like for the people who consider themselves Christian or whatever in the world or spiritual whatever, they didn't even know about MPDs and DID and stuff. Another thing that makes it weird that they... Hold up. Well, that's a blade of grass. I thought that was like another roach or something. Another thing that makes it weird that they consider this always demonic is that they literally believe in corporal punishment. Corporal punishment is one of the most common ways to give somebody multiple personalities through trauma. It is a form of SA and it is MK Ultra. That's another thing that makes it really, really weird. And what else can I say with that? There was something else. Feel like okay, well, yeah, I guess that's all I can really say with that. 46 feet. That's definitely not what I meant to put. Feel like I'm going to hell and doomed for the first time ever now that I'm not doing anything anymore. I already talked about that. 47. If justice is evil, I'm Satan? Question mark.